Alone by Ruth Pitter. Read for LibriVox.org by Newgatenovelist. Along the westway of the wood, when light doth gild its floor, my spirit saith, O solitude! And shuts her chamber door, and doth a solemn silence keep. I think that she doth pray, but whether she doth smile or weep, I may not know nor say. My body standeth still, mine eyes about the hills do range. I shall not know her mysteries, for they are passing strange. But the eve falleth, quiet as death, or as a fairy's glance. When from her door she issueth, she is all radiance. 1916. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
As If Some Little Arctic Flower by Emily Dickinson. Read for LibriVox.org by Winston, Tharp. As if some little Arctic flower upon the polar hem went wandering down the latitudes, until it puzzled came to continents of summer, to firmaments of sun, to strange bright crowds of flowers and birds of foreign tongue. I say, as if this little flower to Eden wandered in. What then? Why, nothing, only your inference therefrom. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. At the Mid-Hour of Night by Thomas Moore. Read for LibriVox.org by Winston, Tharp. At the mid-hour of night, when stars are weeping, I fly to the lone vale we loved, when life shone warm in thine eye. And I think oft, if spirits can steal from the regions of air to revisit past scenes of delight, thou wilt come to me there, and tell me our love is remembered, even in the sky. Then I sing the wild song 'twas once such pleasure to hear, when our voices commingling breathed like one on the ear, and as echo far off through the vale my sad orison rolls, I think, O my love, 'tis thy voice from the kingdom of souls, faintly answering still the notes that once were so dear. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Boadicea, an Ode by William Cooper. Read for LibriVox.org by Alan Mapstone. When the British warrior queen, bleeding from the Roman rods, sought with an indignant mien counsel of her country's gods, sage beneath a spreading oak sat the Druid, hoary chief. Every burning word he spoke, full of rage and full of grief. Princess, if our aged eyes weep upon thy matchless wrongs, 'tis because resentment ties all the terror of our tongues. Rome shall perish, write that word in the blood that she has spilt. Perish, hopeless and abhorred, deep in ruin as in guilt. Rome, for empire far renowned, tramples on 1,000 states. Soon her pride shall kiss the ground. Hark, the Gaul is at her gates. Other Romans shall arise, heedless of a soldier's name. Sounds, not arms, shall win the prize, harmony the path to fame. Then the progeny that springs from the forests of our land, armed with thunder, clad with wings, shall a wider world command. Regions Caesar never knew, thy posterity shall sway, where his eagles never flew, none invincible as they. Such the bard's prophetic words, pregnant with celestial fire, bending as he swept the chords of his sweet but awful lyre. She, with all a monarch's pride, felt them in her bosom glow, rushed to battle, fought, and died. Dying, hurled them at the foe. Ruffians, pitiless as proud, heaven awards the vengeance due. Empire is on us bestowed, shame and ruin wait for you. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Caverns by Madison Colwayne. Read for LibriVox.org by stepheather. 7th of November, 2024, Bangalore, India. Written of Colossal Cave, Kentucky. Isles and abysses, leagues no man explores, of rock that labyrinths and night that drips, where everlasting silence broods with lips of adamant or earthquake-builded floors. Where forms, such as the demon world adores, laborious water carves, whence echo slips, wild-tongued o'er pools where petrifaction strips her breasts of crystal from which crystal pours. Here where primordial fear, the Gorgon, sits, staring all life to stone in ghastly mirth, I seem to tread, with awe no tongue can tell, beneath vast domes by torrent-tortured pits, mid wrecks terrific of the ruined earth, an ancient causeway of forgotten hell. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Christmas Day in the Morning from Bishopric Garland Collection. Read for LibriVox.org by Roger Smith. Christmas Day in the morning. Maids, get up and bake your pies. Bake your pies, bake your pies. Maids, get up and bake your pies. 'Tis Christmas Day in the morning. See the ships all sailing by, sailing by, sailing by. See the ships all sailing by on Christmas Day in the morning. Dame, what made your ducks to die? Ducks to die, ducks to die. Dame, what made your ducks to die on Christmas Day in the morning? Let your lazy maiden sly, maiden sly, maiden sly. Let your lazy maiden sly on Christmas Day in the morning. End of recording. This recording is in the public domain.
The Cold Heaven by W.B. Yeats. Recorded for LibriVox by Bartholomew Begley. Dublin, December 2024. Suddenly, I saw the cold and rook-delighting heaven, that seemed as though ice burned and was but the more ice. And thereupon, imagination and heart were driven so wild that every casual thought of that and this vanished and left but memories that should be out of season with the hot blood of youth, of love crossed long ago. And I took all the blame, out of all sense and reason, until I cried and trembled and rocked to and fro, riddled with light. Ah, when the ghost begins to quicken, confusion of the deathbed over, is it sent out naked on the roads, as the books say, and stricken by the injustice of the skies for punishment? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Cossack Mother by Edith Matilda Thomas. Read for LibriVox.org by mleigh. My little one will die tonight, then break my heart, oh break. But 'twill not be a lonely flight her tender soul shall take. For there, where smoky clouds are spread that blot the sunset sky, are many dying, many dead, and others yet to die. My child loved soldiers so, and they, whene'er they passed this door, would toss her in their arms in play, and laugh when she cried, "More!" So when she passes hence tonight, they too, the brave, the strong, as up they climb the heavenly height, will bear her soul along. With spirit lances shining clear, they reach God's citadel. My little one will have no fear, with friends she loves so well. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Cradle-Child by Edith Matilda Thomas. Read for LibriVox.org by mleigh. Forgotten in a chamber lone, the hooded cradle, brown and old, began to rock, began to moan. Where are the babes I used to hold? To men and women they are grown, and through the world their way must make. The cradle rocked and made its moan. My babes no single step could take. A helmsman one, on wide seas blown, his sinewy hands the wheel employs. The cradle rocked and made its moan. My babes could scarcely grasp their toys. And one, with words of winning tone, God's shepherd goes the lost to seek. The cradle rocked and still made moan. The babes I held no word could speak. And one, with children of her own, her life is toil and love and prayer. The cradle rocked and still made moan. My babes of babes could take no care. Now all that once were mine are flown, but one that still with me shall bide. The cradle ceased to rock, to moan, the sweetest one, the babe who died. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Cremation of Sam McGee by Robert W. Service. Read for LibriVox.org by Terrance Callan. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake Lebarge I cremated Sam McGee. Now Sam McGee was from Tennessee, where the cotton blooms and blows. Why he left his home in the south to roam round the pole, God only knows. He was always cold, but the land of gold seemed to hold him like a spell, though he'd often say in his homely way that he'd sooner live in hell. On a Christmas day we were mushing our way over the Dawson Trail. Talk of your cold, through the parka's fold it stabbed like a driven nail. If our eyes we'd close, then the lashes froze till sometimes we couldn't see. It wasn't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McGee. And that very night, as we lay packed tight in our robes beneath the snow, and the dogs were fed and the stars o'erhead were dancing heel and toe, he turned to me and, "Cap," says he, "I'll cash in this trip, I guess. and if I do, I'm asking that you won't refuse my last request." Well, he seemed so low that I couldn't say no. Then he says with a sort of moan, "It's the cursed cold, and it's got right hold till I'm chilled clean through to the bone. Yet 'tain't being dead, it's my awful dread of the icy grave that pains. So I want you to swear that foul or fair, you'll cremate my last remains." A pal's last need is a thing to heed, so I swore I would not fail. And we started on at the streak of dawn, but God, he looked ghastly pale. He crouched on the sleigh, and he raved all day of his home in Tennessee, and before nightfall a corpse was all that was left of Sam McGee. There wasn't a breath in that land of death, and I hurried horror-driven, with a corpse half hid that I couldn't get rid because of a promise given. It was lashed to the sleigh, and it seemed to say, "You may tax your brawn and brains, but you promised true, and it's up to you to cremate those last remains." Now a promise made is a debt unpaid, and the trail has its own stern code. In the days to come, though my lips were numb, in my heart how I cursed that load. In the long, long night by the lone firelight, while the huskies round in a ring howled out their woes to the homeless snows, O God, how I loathed the thing. And every day that quiet clay seemed to heavy and heavier grow, and on I went, though the dogs were spent and the grub was getting low. The trail was bad, and I felt half mad, but I swore I would not give in. And I'd often sing to the hateful thing, and it hearkened with a grin. Till I came to the marge of Lake Lebarge, and a derelict there lay. It was jammed in the ice, but I saw in a trice it was called the Alice May. And I looked at it, and I thought a bit, and I looked at my frozen chum. Then, "Here," said I, with a sudden cry, "is my crematorium." Some planks I tore from the cabin floor, and I lit the boiler fire. Some coal I found that was lying around, and I heaped the fuel higher. The flames just soared, and the furnace roared, such a blaze you seldom see. And I burrowed a hole in the glowing coal, and I stuffed in Sam McGee. Then I made a hike, for I didn't like to hear him sizzle so. And the heavens scowled, and the huskies howled, and the wind began to blow. It was icy cold, but the hot sweat rolled down my cheeks, and I didn't know why. And the greasy smoke in an inky cloak went streaking down the sky. I do not know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear, but the stars came out and they danced about ere again I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, "I'll just take a peep inside. I guess he's cooked, and it's time I looked." Then the door I opened wide. And there sat Sam, looking cool and calm in the heart of the furnace roar. And he wore a smile you could see a mile, and he said, "Please close that door. It's fine in here, but I greatly fear you'll let in the cold and storm. Since I left Plumtree down in Tennessee, it's the first time I've been warm." There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake Lebarge I cremated Sam McGee. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Danae by Thomas Sturge Moore. Read for LibriVox.org by Arden. August 17, 2024. Danae. Affectionately dedicated to Charles Hazelwood Shannon, R.A. The story. A daughter was born to Acrisius, king of Argolis, and called Danae, and taken to the temple of Zeus as the custom would have it done. There those who had brought her, having made an offering, awaited an oracle, when pronouncement was made to this effect, that the son of this child should slay her father. Now Acrisius was no king by nature, no, not so much as a brave man is. He, therefore, thinking to prevent fate, determined to immure his daughter, and, by the time that she was weaned, had raised a tower of brass, so strong that it might never be broken into, so smooth that it might never be scaled, and so high that his daughter was reared in the top of it, beyond the reach of any man. There, then, she was reared with no attendance save that of a single crone, who, as youthful poets know, like all old women had but one subject to converse upon, namely the scandals of love. Now this one had been under such penalties forbidden her, that as a companion she was little better than a hen. Danae's mother was so slightly considered, that it is not known whether she died in giving birth to her, or, if not, in what manner she supported the tyranny of her husband. Nevertheless, the will that is love hated the selfish cowardice of Acrisius, and chose the child that she might live immaculate, and yet become a happy mother, in order that the blessedness of that state might be made known, as also the nobleness of the issue born out of purity. For this was the mother of that Perseus, whose quoit hurled to an incredible distance, by accident, as had been prophesied, broke open the head of his cruel grandsire, after which just misfortune he slew the monstrous Gorgon and delivered Andromeda from a sea-dragon. Beside being more beautiful, and doing more heroic actions than it is easy to bear in mind, Zeus, then, the will that is love, the power that is light, prepared everything, and in due time laid siege to that tower, assaulted it, and set it at naught. Thereafter, without affright, without loss of innocence, without violence, shame, or any awkwardness, without the never to be wholly avoided trifling of courtship, but only once bathed naked in a mort in pure sunshine, the Virgin conceived and bare a son, whereupon Acrisius, in a very great panic, thinking it a miracle or worse, sent her to sea in an open chest, her baby with her. But light is over the sea, and love findeth a path across the widest ocean. Nor was she ever in danger, but without fear found both haven and home in Seriphos, where she brought up her son as holily as she ought. This is the story such as youthful poets dream on summer eves by haunted stream. And the poem, like such dreams, has no fixed order or progress, but begins and begins again, and is broken off rather than ended. May this Danae make happy friends with as innocent a maiden and as blessed a mother in thy mind also, gentle reader. Danae, a poem, by Thomas Sturge Moore. Still, brilliant with bright brass, the tower derides the sun's gold shafts, which strike, and on all sides, like ridicule-lit laughter, spread, and some in bravery bend back whence they have come, and try their strength with those that come direct, with first impetuous potency unchecked, from the god's bow. For this the heat is great, o'er all the land of Argolis of late. The king, Acrisius, hopes his tower may prove impregnable to liquid light and love, rolled round it in a golden ocean tide, whose ebb is a June night, and so all dried, and dusty have the ways become. The fields they wind among, with grain a rich soil yields, should glow, not thus discover to the eye, between straws lank and earless, what cracks lie, and lengthened snake-like on the brittle earth. Light in excess stifles her nursling mirth. Old Inachus, most like a fevered wretch, who on his hotbed scarce hath strength to stretch, doth, round stones limping, feebly seaward crawl, while in the tower top Danae small, unconscious how a god toward her steals, across her prison floor, lies numbed, nor feels his burning kiss the hand he reaches first, but swooned amort, what sweat her brow has burst, while parted lips show teeth like maids in bower, where past them no sweet breath hath stirred this hour. An oracle had Zeus, the king of heaven, on this Acrisius' fond petition given. By the unintending hand of thy new-born, an infant daughter's son shalt thou be torn, from life and power, till he that age attain, when young men take the quoits first, live and reign. This silly king was filled with hope at once, to outwit Zeus, which proved him but a dunce. His daughter he from all men straight immured, and deemed himself from grandsons thus secured. Leaves lap and overlap, and trees, the lily, deep delled and fragile grows up very stilly, so silken shade and shaws of varied hue, hid Danae, who whiter daily grew. When molds the potter on his whirling wheel, dumb clay, A hint of final curves will steal from clever hands and sapient shore. Just so, quaint querulous suggestions of a flow of contour simpler, more capacious, slips from God's thumb when he molds a woman's hips. Her thighs will lengthen faster than they round, till their delightful devious line be found. The heels, too narrow, of the little feet will give her steps a wayward wavering sweet, as when, unpropped, the heavy dahlias stoop. Her head nods, and even her spirits droop. For nothing saw she, save her room's few things, beside the well-conned window view, and brings each year no increase to her life's thin store of sights, the only one not known before, a larger loveliness that might be found by searching the great mirrors polished round. This had advent so imperceptible, it dwelt unnoticed there, and yet whimful. She loved to view no soil or levity in her fresh, silent mind, naked and free, her beauty, purely with no least alloy of flurrying shame that hindered to enjoy, nor vain at all, since she had never seen eyes like to those which modest maidens screen themselves from, neither knew that any girls there were less fair than she, or who wore curls less copious or of poorer purple sheen, on lustre lacking black. Oft would she lean as through a thunder rain while combing it, nor then alone before her mirror sit, for when, cool after washing with well water, that up the winding stair nurse daily brought her, she gravely sat to musingly commune with her companion self a June forenoon, to see so grave her gentle image brood within its round that pensiveness renewed, which, on the wane, bright health had nigh dispersed, yet, though in reverie still deep immersed, to gain a smile's return sometimes she smiled, and from her nurse's knee she oft beguiled, when little, by the bright resemblance to her young glad life, had tottered towards the new, espied child, whose fresh rosy limbs resembled love's own in their deep dimpled mould, that trembled within the mirror's glimmering polished deeps. So at the foot of forest trees there peeps a sky crest frame that laughs to recognize another blue. And, though she now knew better, she would not slight her double nor forget her, but smiled, and half deception friendly wise, lingered, though hands no longer patted pleased, to meet their chubby twins as when she seized, with love bunched up her lips to meet the lips, outthrust to them. Still no experience strips, though silver discs may give one the cold shoulder, and though a dozen years must leave one older, that veil with child dreams broidered from her head. Still some way separate existence led the twin, and not so much more silent, sister with her upgrown. Not once had she yet missed her, as slow their earliest dimpled limbs discovered most gradual change, and winsome spareness hovered, waywardly peeping out till plumpness went, or salient points a certain tightness lent, a peevish pinched appearance. In sight, too, their shoulder blades moved looselier. A new, sly meagreness thus crept o'er them. Like shoots, they sprouted up to statelier growth, as roots, sent down into dark mould, grew wider daily. Strange inner effervescence sparkled gaily out through their eyes. Yea, thus they grew, and many a frock is old that once was new, and skirt too short that had been long enough, while thin and faded wears the patterned stuff, till hardly can she picture up its air, when first she put it on, and found it fair, upon her sister, who with pretty grace held it out wide within the mirror's face. Can we now turn our crowding thoughts away from those sweet days? The heart misgives us, nay, but linger o'er the lovely. Soon, full soon, the morning hours lose charm, and it is noon. Though every week her clothes are borne away, soiled, crumpled, limp, wait 7 days and they come back clean, smooth, and neatly folded. So slumber each night renews her. Thus time's flow seems nothing, till she find 2 sandals small, far back within a cupboard on the wall, and hardly can believe that they were hers, then laughs for how the mirror's sister stares at tiny sandals there. Thus live they on, most silent happy twins, almost alone, and yet not quiet, for deep through polished walls, inhabiting adjacent dimmer halls, that gleams like vague perspectives 'neath a lake, mid water lily stems and half awake, dusky or silvered fish, what ghost, what shade of hazier gaze, what dreamier shyer maid, or was it ghosts? vague as her sister fades, when her breath dims the mirror. Ghosts of maids, friends? Or one magic gliding friend that there walks as they walk, more distant combs her hair? The mirror held who most a sister seemed, yet sometimes of this other had she dreamed, who still was seen through that part of the wall, whither her gaze was turned, wimpled a shawl, or laced a slipper, dim in gold haze drowned. But if she puzzled low, the mirror frowned, so she must smile to cheer her thoughtless friend, and thus unsolved her meditations end. Nor might she muse, when from the appointed place, new budded breasts dissimulating grace, as March flakes feign the snowdrop's calm, showed forms, hazy like mushrooms when the night-time warms, that globe and gleam, yet leave the stars in doubt, if on the dewy slopes they shift about. For, did she muse, her sister first grew still, then, as she harder thought, frowned and looked ill. So she for pity could no long time dwell upon these mysteries, yet all went well, nor did she find an urgency for thought, to mark events. Solutions came unsought, or were not needed. Yet she had a need, unhelped, though change thus patiently proceed, and she be never long what she hath been. Yea, even a mere white mouse caged and seen, through close-strung wires, will writhe its sleek length high, and hold but pinky paws, and seem to sigh, while, sniffing tainted air, it seeks a vent from prison, and then scurries back, as bent on finding in the oft-searched farther end some small escape, and since its birth there penned, yet lives on, never losing childish hope. Somehow eventually its sense may cope with most perplexing life imprisonment. Thus Danae, with hopeful discontent, led to and fro her white shape in her life's well-hampered home. And still this useless strife's fatigue can barely disappoint a mind so scantly versed in freedom, or unblind to fate's fell force, eyes closed by charity, to real and might-be sight's disparity. 'Tis time. Come, turn these loitering thoughts away from those child years. Lack we the heart still? Yea, yet linger o'er the lovely, soon, full soon. The morning hours lose charm, and it is noon. Of manners and accomplishments you deem, so lonely maid had little. This may seem quite certain. Yet e'en as her tender flesh, that readily took print or blenched, so fresh, the quiet gods had kept her growing mind. Leaves wet with dew and lettuce hearts confined are not more dainty or more clear of hue, though never to fib tempted she was true. 2 charming feet taught her how best to walk. To please a sensitive ear she trained her talk. Full oft to sit upright made her feel good, and raised her languor to a better mood. Concerned to judge of objects which were best, watchful for intuition, she would test her least decision by renewed appeals to quick experience, how it is she feels, spacing her coral necklace beads with sprigs of hen and chicken fern, and how with twigs of box whose leaves resemble beetle wings. Thus, tracing beauty through 1,000 things, her features had assumed an earnest mien, which would have well become enthroned queen. Yet as a breeze with honeysuckle, she had madcap moments, and her locks would free to dance and twine. This freedom so became them. She oft indulged it and was loath to tame them. Yet when she did, thoroughly combed she bound them, with ribbons or in strings of pearls and wound them, plaited them now and now would have them crimple, or snood them up completely in a wimple. For each success suggested new successes, till she was taught distinction by her tresses. At meals, in ordinance for seemliness, her practice like perfection did express. Disgust, watching her nurse's common ways, had taught her what to avoid in native grace, had chosen fine-cut morsels, moderate sips, and placed a napkin by to wipe her lips. "Thank you, and please," she said, till nurse exclaimed that matched what her a goddess might be shamed, which praise gave her great pleasure. In reward, a kiss to the old crone she would accord, for she had learned to win her judges over, whereas it women will not this discover. Her little terracotta dolls to see, home to their cupboard taught her courtesy, for they were brittle, easily upset, as much so as folk for politeness met. To lay for meals and put away her toys, thus exercise her tact and furnish joys, while moths that entered during the warm nights were novelties, excitements, and delights. Their mealy wings full early she respected, and with both hands behind her them inspected, enjoying golds and browns and marblings rich, and shading finer than the finest stitch that silk embroidery can hope for. She, their delicate curved feathered antennae, admired and supposed them in headdress. Their jeweled eyes she knew at once, oh yes, though some bore eyes upon their pinions painted. With such deceiving wiles she was acquainted. The bronze-green rosebud and the ladybird paid visits. Calls of butterflies occurred more rarely. Sparrows could be lured with crumbs, and even doves, while wasps would light on plums. The characters of all she soon divined, and from the first these last distressed her mind. For cruelty seemed such a proof of thought, she deemed this insect wiser than she ought, and hated it far more than there was need. To women partial judgments Zeus decreed. Come, turn, though late, these two fond thoughts away from her full days. Still, love pleadeth nay. But linger o'er the lovely, soon, full soon. The morning hours lose charm, and it is noon. How long it took before her bed was made. Such precious cares expended, overpaid, and self-approval sweet themselves. It stood, a scaffold house of slender painted wood, secluded like a shrine far in the room, where curtains through the day made hallowed gloom. Deep, many a dove gave every bosom feather. The mattress hung on straps of pliant leather, which, through each other plaited, joined the frame. Soft were the pillows, over all there came a coverlet which made sheets gleam so white. Heaven's lining, outward turned, less dazzling bright, appears to those who, at the height of noon, loll back on scented heather late in June, and sound beyond blue, blue, and blue beyond. Blue drunken to sea, sleeping like a pond, beneath such heavens, could scarcely match that quilt, where the profusion of the night was spilt. Numberless stars, yea, stars of every size, thus friendly night and day did fraternize. Only the jealous sun, he was not there. He with a silver crowd would nothing share, neither a spangled cloth nor day's long void, through which he rides in pomp, soul sad and cloyed. Yet o'er her navel, when she lay supine, in its first quarter meek the moon did shine. This served for warmth, but oh, above her head hung the real glory of that lovely bed, which she, half dreaming, studied many a morn, with infant happiness, sleep's newly born. Fan-wise did leafy boughs depth o'er depth rise, like upward caves or under sea-green skies, in whose aerial vaults the small sweet-voiced and never-wearied choristers rejoiced. And some had nests, and some were building them, and all made silent singing. Folk condemn long hours spent in this delicious way, leave them the busy middle of the day. Watched Danae, though, as pensive she undressed, like none retiring from a world unblessed, to dear herself in one god's service vowed. When naked over her limp weeds she bowed, as Hypnos bends above a cold, sad corse, to extricate the soul some strange remorse. For things disparaged once keeps clinging there, touched home too late, so bowed she, and such care she took to extricate all knots in fold, her pretty sheddings neatly, then, half cold, whipped in between the sheets, and wakened half, drew on her simple night-dress with a laugh, to think how lazy she in this was proved, but out she got that all its folds be smoothed, chanting to Artemis her evening hymn, with raised hands looking skyward, stood a slim and pallid upright, like a stile of stone, or like the moonlit path on waters lone. Then, gliding back to bed, she made a nest, remembering all the games that pleased her best. What time she, younger, raised up tent or cave, and head thrust downward did the darkness brave. So, smiling like a mother o'er such thought, sank, as leaf floats down through a temple court, down through sleep's vasty halls of marble black, like star ray through dark sea, sank down and back. But oh, return, return from those sweet days. Behold the theme of our fond wandering praise. Her father's should be dearest, from his court, exiled that lonely lie, swooned in a mort. Where brilliant with bright brass the tower derides the sun's gold shafts, which strike in on all sides, like ridicule-lit laughter spread, while some, in bravery, bend back whence they have come, and try their strength with those that come direct, with first impetuous mastery unchecked, from the god's bow, there, as orchid may, to make an oak's top mossy hollow gay, be reared and blossom out of reach and sight, wind-sown, the nursling of warm genial light, she dwells, and there dwells deep in polished walls, the one companion to her lot that falls, her body's double, for her soul's one friend, that still with her to every task doth bend, and lends a hand when she her needle threads, in step with her across the carpet treads, and ghost-like heaves the sigh that is not heard, and shapes with shadowy lips a soundless word.
Whene'er Danae has a sigh to heave, or drops a word that makes the silence grave.
To think it was but one, this sister strange, that circling wider round her life doth range. She hath believed more neat, graceful, and kind, since in herself she blemishes can find. And when she does, her quick eyes turn within, so never catch the fair repeated sin. And when again she glances toward her glass, she views her own reproachful, mute alas. For from the walls across the disk it steals, like a dear friend come close to say she feels all sorrow at her misbehaving friend. But, ere she speak, those admonitions end, on finding sorrow all as deep as hers. Welcome her own, stretched upon glistening furs, there, like still fallen statues on old lawns, deep puzzles for the country-minded fawns. These sisters slumbering lie, while mimic sun, up one outstretched arm, cautious, crawls up one, real sunlips steal, a quiver yet to scare, so lose their prize.
Whom Zeus is well aware, lies not a purpose in his path, from fear. He e'en forbids the swallows twitter near.
While in her bath she washed herself that morn, a dizzy whirl had from her senses borne the startled soul. First, ere she strove to rise, all trembling with the blankness of surprise, she may have been daydreaming in the water.
Flashing upon its surface, sunlight caught her.
Next, struggling up and out on towel spread, soft snowy for her wet bare feet to tread. The bath she fancied stood not where it used. The room swam round her then, dizzy, confused, turning half wildered with the rocking light that leapt up off the new quit water bright, and gave her chase. She turns and sinks, half tries to think, yet knows she nothing thinks, but droops along beyond the towelled space, feels a warm darkness close down o'er her face, and feels no more, nor hears her nurse's knocks, or voice that bids her raise the latch that locks the door from the inside. The light is round her, and Zeus as in a golden sea has drowned her, to which she is not native, but endued shall be ere long, and then, with life renewed, shall, sweet soul, to its depths be a mute fish, yet not know Zeus's will. He doth not wish that she should know, but is more than content, searching to find her all his love had meant, as fresh, as gladdening as her body's beauty, in thought and will, which call themselves not duty, but are what they should be, entirely give the guerdon for which life is bound to live. Self-approbation of such inwardness, it could grow conscious but by being less. Daily it had been, when some hour entered, in at her casement high, Zeus even dared come close up to the tall embroidering frame. Just as his fingers set her wools aflame, she started up to move more in the shade. Still on he crept, and still she was afraid to feel his touch. So his light widened, till no shade, except beneath the window-sill, was left. There crouched she in the broadening belt, and watched the crimson of his last rays melt. She liked to see and dodge him round the room, which was great fun. He gone, all grew to gloom. So had she done, oh often, very oft, but change had come, a gradual change and soft, stealing as in first slippers to her side, and taught her less to hurry, more to glide. She stole away still when broad rays encroached, but now, as though she feared to be reproached, would hold her hand back in their golden shower, then instantly withdraw it, round her bower, was thus pursued and stooped beneath the sill, like one whom all in silence wholly fill, and wonder at the expanse of warmth, of power, of light, of glory, in the twilight hour, had oft surprised her in such ecstasies. Then had she risen stiffly from her knees, to gaze out on the tranquilizing hues, blues that are almost gray, grays that are blues, and as the stars came out would then recall the thoughts that hour would bring when she was small. For then of old her nurse would lift her where she might well watch old darkness overbear the youthful light whom all things plead for, sheep who bleat, and lowing herds and half asleep, birds, ever loath to note how day's cup fills with joy, and stables then, and woods and hills, hush up, nymph centaurs, folk with tails and horns, settle themselves in nooks near lulling bournes. Then floated to her head came children's chatter, and she, it may be startled by such clatter, would let her eyes droop down to darkening earth, and watch them playing in their noisy mirth. Oft times they, quarrelling, fell by the ears, for some small sudden play chance. Then her tears ran fast, and such upheaving sobs would rend her slight frail frame as would not know an end, till she was tucked up in her neat white bed, when would commence a coursing through her head of wondering queries, how their love and hate were roused, till stunned by sleep importunate. Why are we back again in childhood's time? Never but thus life leaves that balmy clime, to strong returns of infant tenderness, yielding and wisely, and we likewise, yes, will yield and slowly travel from those days, as she made journey slowly, oft but grace, turned and kissed moods which had been parted with, and gaining joy herself to us shall give. So tall and slender later on she grew, that planted on a footstool she could view the many lanes that led up through the fields, in which stroll towards where deeper shadow shields. First fallen leaves, too, whose young summer griefs, that autumn litter should, as withered leaves, haunt the hedge skirt, hang round their bowering bliss, dead moods of light foot spring which now they miss. They loiter on, and the withdrawing sky, pity's feet slow in dust, higher, more high, recedeth and expandeth wider o'er them, softened with prescience of the years before them. They, late in most reposeful country life, have found unrest and something of the strife of hearts, which cruel Eros loves to see. What balm was theirs to soothe, as peacefully they went arm-length? What made them so content, in silence thus to walk together lent? Boundless and vague, deep wishes welled in her. Wide grew her eyes, and through the echoing air a memory, sad, single, precious scrap of love-lore, sang, while round her eyes she'ld wrap her hair to blind them, what she once had heard a poor girl sing, so sorrow's tide recurred. Haste thee to my arms.
Emptily hang they, voided of thy charms. Marry me.
Like some sick leaf a fierce wind hunts alone, proving its gold ring false on stem and stone.
This feather from love's wing to Danae blew.
Ignorant of his name was she, nor knew aught of his antic gambols with the maids, as when she questions, her old nurse upbraids. This crone, be sure, had instruction strict, to see how 'tis she lets herself be tricked, to talk of love, men's manners, women's wiles. Therefore well taught how innocence beguiles the weak lips to unwise discovery, has bound her tongue to stay most silently within her mouth, till, grown so taciturn, her gossip's heart has learnt to never yearn for converse, though she truly loves the child, who, these songs sung, let loose her hair and smiled. Soon lifted eyes were tempted off anew among the stars, those eyes most simply true, thought but small holes drilled through a roof, the sky. What should she know of gods or destiny, of Zeus, sky king, or Cyprus and her doves? What was to tell of them except their loves? No prayer, she said, nor had she learnt to muse how life's a dream, or of the soul that sues for speech from out the frost-bound lips of fate. Nor knew she aught of thee, omniscience great, or how her small mind some would father so. Yet there of mystery was what she might know, who had found tokens in her tiny round. That little limit of her life was ground, sufficient for a larger, lovelier growth. Attaching meanings to the light, how loath it was to shine, she thought, through such small holes. When the vast void, through which the day's sun rolls, it could flood, ending night's long thirst unslaked, yet could not clothe in words her fancy's naked beauty, since her vocabulary small, drafted from out her nurses, might not call her thoughts by name. She smiled them to her side, a mind's eye harvest sweeter, not more wide, than filled a miser barrel's cynic round of sky blue, disentangled and unwound, her idea of the home of blessedness,
whence stars shone, could not bind such vague distress as bosky gardens feed in glowworm eyes,
could not release from fear or authorize the hopes it fed, but as that insect creeps peering through haze which its own radiance steeps, and shown by light that haunts it like a ghost. A few tufts, so the things her life loves most, are shown to her with disproportionate worth, lit by a heart as lonely from its birth as on the moors a glowworm star at night. Poor lone heart wandering far from realms of light, her swoon's dream is that she, transported thither, love's wanders close companioned near a river, uncharacterized the friend, whose arms embrace her, slow pacing down a path star daisies trace there. Meanwhile at home and far from such a place, the sun stretched o'er her showers on her face, kisses that meet no blush nor dint the snow. Thus summer wastes for all the high peaks know. Yet brilliant with bright brass, the tower derides the sun's gold shafts, which strike and on all sides glance like bright parried laughter, spread, and some in bravery bend back whence they have come, and try their strength with those that come direct, with their full genial potency unchecked from thee God's heart, O vanity of pride, in which a royal miser hopes to hide his coward purpose at his child's expense, starving her of those benefits immense, which to the growing soul friendship and love yield like boon climates. Is not Zeus above? And will he be accomplice to thy fears? What weapons hast thou against him, save thy tears, if thou dost think to oppose? How has he given his oracle, yet still outbraving heaven, standeth thy coward boast of hollow brass? O vanity of vanities, alas! Yet she is loved, Zeus well has weighed her need, although the wealth within her be not freed, and she know not, as oft it is not known to maids whom hearts of worth have claimed their own, that she is loved. No haunting of her mind by gaze or voice sets in, still shall she find solace in things unthankful. For her yearning, yet now dark silence warms, her fate is turning from life love stinted overmuch, for save her nurse, no one to love, or that could crave her love she knew. Thus let heart worship fall, portioned to dead things, as some silken shawl, that she would hold against her cheek, kiss it, space out, and bid its folds her fancy fit,
Till thus an afternoon was whiled away,
fondling its foolish yards. Another day brought flowers that came in pitchers, or a load, plumping an apron, or else singly stowed in with the butter sprinkled o'er the fruit, or making dewy nests for eggs, first mute, for gladness, next but clapping hands on feet that totter with impatience, see her greet. With airy kisses little friends, small eyes, glorious but gazing on the liberal skies, sent by the open-hearted folk who wonder how fair is small prisoner princess penned up yonder. Friends, but torture like to tongue-tied love. She knew no names for heart's ease or foxglove. The spindle parsley, purple vetch, the clover, were all as nameless as her trance's lover. She cooed above them sounds in pet names stead, sweet Aphrodite's navel, nipple red, her fly-trap, or her son, love in a mist, or crimson May called kisses double-kissed. Such were the only names her old nurse knew, but told not, fearing she'd explain them too. Next in her favor stood some exile shells, large lips, agape with wonder-working spells, which the ear hearing, vainly the mind strove to dredge a meaning from, so oft she wove, with nets and toils of hair one to her ear. Deep in that cushion sunk she found most dear, her feet out thrust on the mat most to her mind, because mid green waved lines it showed a kind of ready needle pictured likeness to her whole bare body, over which there flew much smaller portraits of herself, as she is to her mind brought back by memory. As thus she sits, her treasures piled about, words foil her ears that in a sailor's shout, Aphrodite, each wave mothers thine almighty form, uncovers it each breeze, thee to please and to tease all thy lovers. Sundown, the thick swoon from her body lifted, so from frost filmed tarn a mist unrifted lifts, yet hangs waiting near. A vivid grey blinded her. Night's cold coming drove away her sense once more. She slept while pain did drum, with muffled hands her temples dull and numb. Confusedly capricious dreams have wrung those tones from her with which that girl had sung, while, as sea chants climb twisted shells to bed, male words through dainty doors have reached her head. And from this night, as some fond woman sits beside her love, she with the sun, when its first maddened wealth plunged on her shoulder, till, having bathed and blessed her, it slipped o'er the sill. Her soul subdued to might of things concealed, the purpose of her being unrevealed, worked through her, changed her, so a female swan, who young till then without a care sailed on, quits the delightful mirror of the lake, and mid the rushes doth herself betake, to build a nest, the first that she hath made, nor yet foresees its use.
So now obeyed the Naya instinct's deep imperative. Great tenderness she to her voice doth give.
Her movements grow more lulling, and woo more. Her smiles come trembling from her heart's full core, like a brimmed bull in gleeful anxious hands. Her features shake with rapture. There she stands, tranced, while the future thrills her through and through, feeling more good than she knows reason to, as though she had been conquered from within, and her Lord love through her the world would win. While from dim distance, drowned in walls that gleam, there waits for her approach, as it would seem. Her hazy golden double waits and smiles, poor warder shade, who never more beguiles her charge of interest, for squirrel souled.
Danae now puts by.
Her hoard will hold no treasure more full soon. All are designed for someone, who that someone is, her mind has no clear knowledge, yet her wealth set out. Her terracotta friends stood all about. She sits among them and she smiles at each, and sometimes seems surprised they still lack speech. Then takes the dearest with brown curls and cap, pale blue, him smiling, naked, will she wrap in her best kerchief, and away he goes, to wait in the dark hoard. Zeus only knows who 'tis he waits for there with balls of silk, shells, silver trinkets, and gold mugs. Her milk she now drinks from a bowl of maple wood, yet surely finds it twice as rich and good. So changed she was. The world too seemed becalmed.
All summer wants still lingered unalarmed.
For the fierce forest fires of autumn sped, slower, glowed larger with less hectic red, to equal the great glow of July gold. It seemed that ne'er they fallen low, their cold white ashes would be huddling round the farms, and choking in at doors. On false alarms, birds flew to sea, still the bland weather stayed. Later, the roof of clouds, rent through or frayed. On winter's lap let warm boons drop, to cheer men's hearts. Such fondling had the tower dear, where each and all those gleams are welcomed, like a lover's letter. When young breezes strike a tune, and spring's spry wanton comes, her nurse looks puzzled, makes her pinched up lips to purse, and her eyes blink, bewildered at the maid, who goldly glimmers in the gleam, afraid they have not told her of the thing aright. She falls to rubbing them with all her might. For lo, a woman with child, no maid is that, sits where the maid a year before had sat. She fain had got to scolding, but delayed, so clear the eyes she met. And then she prayed she might be much mistaken, and still knew she was not. Such a queer knot how undo, for she had ne'er an instant left the tower, scarcely the room for much more than an hour. Who could have done this thing? Oh, ye great gods! Walls, locks, and all man's cares make little odds to you, when once ye have a mind a thing shall be. Well may a man stare, whistle, sing, and blow upon his nails if ye have entered with him a race on which perhaps had centered dozens of spangled hopes, or life, 'tis one, and the race won before 'tis ever run. So, when a boy child came to light, her father had to be told he was grandsire, though rather his ears had heard his daughter pined away, in prison lone was gone to swell that day the dim ranks of his dead who wait in earth's strongholds, all kings, or issue by their births, of kings or queens or queenly mother-ed. He felt as though an iron-forged bolt head was hurtling wilfully like to the disk. Young men in rivalry hurl, whereby great risk is run by such as watch. So, all at once, fear, worse midwife for action, did ensconce herself within the unheroic head of King Acrisius, and straightway from bed, women she knows not dragged the hapless girl. A chest they brought inlaid with jet and pearl, with ivory incrustations held by nails of orichalk, yet seasoned such as sails, for months uninjured o'er the salt Levant. The dove-tailed cedar frame, beveled I grant, were the long reeds that ribbed its seams within, and yet their purpose with it was but sin. The cumbrous lid had been prized from its hinges, blood from torn fingers shed then, grimly tinges. Darker the dark wood near their former place. Oh, deep and broad and long enough the space, its scented sides enclosed, cushion and shawl, they stint no more than for an alcove small. Draped that a queen might chat with a princess, their hearts were hard as naked planks no less. They placed the frightened mother in this box, still in her night shift. Not she strives, but rocks, and rocks her baby, rocks her own heart's terror. And by this meekness double dies their error, who lift her down and round the tower stair, and strap the huge chest firmly to a pair of long stout litter poles. The slaves flag not, but set it swinging, breaking to a trot, and on she passes through the town shawl hid, like muffled grandame to a banquet bid. She hears the castanets of dancing girls, but scents no drugged whiffs from their shaken curls. She hears the slaves hail those who block the way, sees not the torch-lit market bright as day. She hears loud hearty sailors in their tavern, rousing its gaunt drift timbers like a cavern.
Aphrodite's in the ocean, all then right as with its motion.
Sees not the painted goddess its lewd sign, soused by the hiccuping roisterers, drip with wine. Sees not the pine brand blaze above the quay, but hears armed heels crunch shingle heavily, while for this cause the chest uneasy reels. Under and through the wraps it stirs, she feels a fresh wet wind, and hears the weltering wash of waters. Then the poles run out, feet splash, and when set down again she raised her eyes, she saw the simple stars that in surprise were crowded close together. Long she, dazed, lay like a fallen winged thing, while the raised male voices dwindled till the dipping oars could make their rhythm felt. Then low-banked shores, to rowlocks' dulled beat processional, parade black-blotted groups of poplar tall, like mutes, between their trunks like lines of tombs, on either side behind the night mist glooms. And like some broken-hearted woman bent, that heaves her hair with sobs as on she went, a willow kneels among them here and there. The water wakes and louder wails to her, nay, wails what old choked sorrows now no more. Triumphant shouts borne from a sonorous shore break up her trance, and happy hurried airs make haste, lest she, when shaken unawares, on Aphrodite's cradle rockers fear, to whisper goodwill tidings in her ear. A boat had labored with the chest in tow, dull wooden sounds faint, homeward it doth go. All this long time she held her baby tight, and stared the poor stars out with all her might. Now, looking down, she sees his waking eyes claim, as his curled gold locks the sun, the skies, in parentage. She dandles in the air, the pretty wanton, who then clips her hair, in fistfuls crows, and o'er her shoulder spies Hermes with zephyrs winged like dragonflies, who, watchful how such frolic crew behaves, pilots them o'er blue inly varied waves, so many blues, yet each unlike the other, grow all greens when a zephyr flies his brother. In vain the gallant Hermes doffs his hat, for jealous Zeus gave strict commandment that his messenger should do his duty, dight in form impalpable to mortal sight. Yet, well seen of the baby demigod, he from the merry knave receives a nod. Far, far behind the tall grey tower stands, against the north, is left by night's rash hands. On brilliant breasted dawn, a bruise of blue, to fade as her hale pulse revives anew. O happier thou than women, who must know, at last by daylight, not moon's opal glow, him whom they loved, thou, loved by the unknown, a mother, all a mother's joys thine own. Without the pain that overtakes a wife, to learn love lasts a season, not for life, must be replaced by friendship at the best. Thou art happy in thy wave-wrought nest, not to have loved, not to have known a lover,
And yet what kisses thus thy babe to cover? That will, that loves thee, gives, yet asks not love, so thou mayst lift those happy eyes above, and see unclouded heavens all thy days, untaxed, untroubled by an husband's ways, which are not as love's perfect way, and yet demand as they were love's own to be met. To thee the gift is thine own tranquil heart, in which no taint or failure claimeth part. From thee the gift received shall be thy son, when thou in him thy perfect work hast done, that he may fill the world with hero deeds, and answer all men's even as thou his needs.
This God-freed, God-loved woman hail aloud. Breezes, your king the sun mounts o'er yon cloud. Swell those big-chested conches' strained trumpet throats. He hears and knows you, though she little notes. Still thee sad silent home, that distance veils, each moment bears behind, as on she sails, to new life, lit with large affinities. And for her son Perseus what destinies await beyond the sounding straits that sunder, dead past from future life. On sailed they under the tingling blue, till lo, Seriphos, reared above 1,000,000 moving waves, appeared. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Death by Water. From The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. Read for LibriVox.org by Dale Grothmann. Phlebas the Phoenician, a fortnight dead, forgot the call of gulls and the deep-sea swell, and the profit and loss. A current under sea picked his bones in whispers. As he rose and fell, he passed the stages of his age and youth, entering the whirlpool. Gentile or Jew, O you who turn the wheel and look to windward, consider Phlebas, who was once handsome and tall as you. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Death in Battle by Clive Hamilton. Read for LibriVox.org by Phil Schempf. Open the gates for me. Open the gates of the peaceful castle, rosy in the west, in the sweet dim isle of apples, over the wide sea's breast. Open the gates for me. Sorely pressed have I been, and driven and hurt beyond bearing this summer day. But the heat and the pain together suddenly fell away. All's cool and green. But a moment agone, among men cursing in fight and toiling, blinded I fought. But the labor passed on a sudden, even as a passing thought, and now alone. Ah, to be ever alone, in flowery valleys among the mountains, where never foot has trod, in the dewy upland places, in the garden of God, this would atone. I shall not see the brutal crowded faces around me, that in their toil have grown into the faces of devils, yes, even as my own, when I find thee. O country of dreams, beyond the tide of the ocean, hidden and sunk away, out of the sound of battles, near to the end of day, full of dim woods and streams. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Death's Lecture and the Funeral of a Young Gentleman by Richard Crashaw. Read for LibriVox.org by Public Domain Scholar. Death's Lecture and the Funeral of a Young Gentleman. Dear relics of a dislodged soul, whose lack makes many a mourning paper put on black. O stay a while, ere thou draw in thy head, and wind thyself up, close in thy cold bed. Stay but a little while, until I call, a summons worthy of thy funeral. Come then, youth, beauty, blood, all ye soft powers, whose silken flatteries swell a few fond hours into a false eternity. Come, man, hyperbolize it nothing. Know thy span, take thine own measure here, down, down, and bow before thyself in thine idea. Thou huge emptiness, contract thy bulk, and shrink all thy wild circle to a point. O sink lower and lower yet, till thy lean size call heaven to look on thee with narrow eyes. Lesser and lesser yet, till thou begin to show a face, fit to confess thy kin, thy neighborhood to nothing. Proud looks and lofty eyelids, here put on yourselves in your unfeigned reflection. Here, gallant ladies, this impartial glass, through all your painting, shows you your true face. These death-sealed lips, are they dare give the lie to the loud boasts of poor mortality? These curtained windows, this retired eye, outstares the lids of large-looked tyranny. This posture is the brave one. This that lies thus low stands up, methinks, thus and defies the world. All daring dust and ashes, only you, of all interpreters, read nature true. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Dream in Early Spring by Fredegonde Shove. Read for LibriVox.org by Bruce Kachuk. Now when I sleep, the thrush breaks through my dreams with sharp reminders of the coming day. After his call 1 minute I remain unwaked, and on the darkness which is me there springs the image of a daffodil, growing upon a grassy bank alone, and seeming with great joy his bell to fill with drops of golden dew, which on the lawn he shakes again, where they lie bright and chill. His head is drooped, the shrouded winds that sing bend him which way they will. Never on earth was there before so beautiful a ghost. Alas, he had a less than flower birth, and like a ghost indeed must shortly glide from all but the sad cells of memory, where he will linger, an imprisoned beam, or fallen shadow of the golden world, long after this and many another dream.
End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Eldorado by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Tony Scheinman. Gaily bedight, a gallant knight in sunshine and in shadow had journeyed long, singing a song in search of Eldorado. But he grew old, this knight so bold, and o'er his heart a shadow fell as he found no spot of ground that looked like Eldorado. And as his strength failed him at length, he met a pilgrim's shadow. "Shadow," said he, "where can it be, this land of Eldorado?" "Over the mountains of the moon, down the valley of the shadow. Ride, boldly ride," the shade replied, "if you seek for Eldorado." End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Envoy by William Samuel Johnson. Read for LibriVox.org by Ike Sherr. Princes, take heed. For where are they, Valois, Navarre, and Orléans? Death drones the answer, far away. Marchand d'habit. Chiffon. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Evening Star by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Tony Scheinman. 'Twas noontide of summer, and mid-time of night, and stars in their orbits shone pale through the light of the brighter cold moon, mid planets her slaves, herself in the heavens, her beam on the waves. I gazed awhile on her cold smile, too cold for me. There passed, as a shroud, a fleecy cloud, and I turned away to thee, proud evening star, in thy glory afar, and dearer thy beam shall be. For joy to my heart is the proud part thou bearest in heaven at night, and the more I admire thy distant fire than that colder lowly light. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Fable by Clark Ashton Smith. From Weird Tales, July 1927. Read for LibriVox.org by Dale Grothmann. O lords and gods that are, the assigning tide upon some prowless beach where a forgotten fisher dwells, at length will leave the sea-flung jars of Solomon. And he, the fisher, fumbling mid the weeds and shells, shall find them, and shall rive the rusted seals, and free the gins that shall tread down thy towering iron hells, and turn to homeless wrack thy proud reality, that shall remold thy pyramids and mountains flown, and lift Atlantis on their shoulders from the sea, to flaunt her kraken-fouled necropolis unknown, and lift again those vaster peaks that saw the veil of fire from primal suns on plains calescent thrown. O lords and gods that are, I tell a future tale. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Fisherman by John Greenleaf Whittier. Read for LibriVox.org by Phil Schempf. Hurrah! The seaward breezes sweep down the bay amain. Heave up, my lads, the anchor, run up the sail again. Leave to the lubber landsman the rail car and the steed. The stars of heaven shall guide us, the breath of heaven shall speed. From the hilltop looks the steeple, and the lighthouse from the sand, and the scattered pines are waving their farewell from the land. One glance, my lads, behind us, for the homes we leave one sigh, ere we take the change and chances of the ocean and the sky. Now, brothers, for the icebergs of frozen Labrador, floating spectral in the moonshine along the low black shore, where like the snow the gannet's feathers on Brador's rocks are shed, and the noisy murre are flying like black scuds overhead, where in the mist Tie Rock is hiding and the sharp reef lurks below, and the white squall smites in summer and the autumn tempests blow, where through gray and rolling vapor from evening unto morn 1,000 boats are hailing, horn answering unto horn. Hurrah for the red island, with the white cross on its crown! Hurrah for Mechatina, and its mountains bare and brown, where the caribou's tall antlers o'er the dwarf wood freely toss, and the footstep of the Micmac has no sound upon the moss. There we'll drop our lines and gather old ocean's treasures in, where'er the mottled mackerel turns up a steel dark fin. The sea's our field of harvest, its scaly tribes our grain. We'll reap the teeming waters, as at home they reap the plain. Our wet hands spread the carpet, and light the hearth of home. From our fish, as in the old time, the silver coin shall come. As the demon fled the chamber where the fish of Tobit lay, so ours from all our dwellings shall frighten want away. Though the mist upon our jackets in the bitter air congeals, and our lines wind stiff and slowly from off the frozen reels, though the fog be dark around us, and the storm blow high and loud, we will whistle down the wild wind and laugh beneath the cloud. In the darkness as in daylight, on the water as on land, God's eye is looking on us, and beneath us is his hand. Death will find us soon or later, on the deck or in the cot, and we cannot meet him better than in working out our lot. Hurrah, hurrah, the west wind comes freshening down the bay. The rising sails are filling. Give way, my lads, give way. Leave the coward landsman, clinging to the dull earth like a weed. The stars of heaven shall guide us. The breath of heaven shall speed. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Good King Wenceslas by J.M. Neal. Read for LibriVox.org by Roger Smith. Good King Wenceslas. Good King Wenceslas looked out on the feast of Stephen, when the snow lay round about, deep and crisp and even. Brightly shone the moon that night, though the frost was cruel, when a poor man came in sight, gathering winter fuel. Hither, page, and stand my bee, if thou knowest it telling, yonder peasant, who is he, where and what his dwelling? Sire, he lives a goodly kence, underneath the mountain, right against the forest fence, by St. Agnes' fountain. Bring me flesh and bring me wine, bring me pine logs hither, thou and I will see him dine, when we bear them thither. Page and monarch forth they went together, though the rude wind's wild lament, and the bitter weather. Sire, the night is darker now, and the wind blows stronger. Fails my heart, I know not how, I can go no longer. Mark my footsteps, good my page, tread thou in them boldly. Thou shalt find thy winter's rage, freeze thy blood less coldly. In his master's steps he trod, where the snow lay dinted. Heat was in the very sod, which the saint life printed. Therefore, Christian men, be sure, wealth or rank possessing, ye who now will bless the poor, shall yourselves find blessing. End of recording. This recording is in the public domain.
Here's a Little Mouse by E. Cummings. Read for LibriVox.org by Winston Tharp. Here's a little mouse, and what does he think about, I wonder, as over this floor, quietly with bright eyes, drifts. Nobody can tell because nobody knows, or why, jerks here and here, grooving the room's silence, this like a littlest poem. With wee ears and see, tail frisks, gone. Mouse, we are not the same, you and I, since here's a little he, or is it, or was it something we saw in the mirror? Therefore we'll kiss, for maybe what was disappeared into ourselves who look, startled. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Horace, Book the 2nd, Ode the 10th, by William Cowper. Read for LibriVox.org by Mark Harrington. Receive, dear friend, the truths I teach, so shalt thou live beyond the reach of adverse fortune's power. Not always tempt the distant deep, nor always timorously creep along the treacherous shore. He that holds fast the golden mean, and lives contentedly between the little and the great, feels not the wants that pinch the poor, nor plagues that haunt the rich man's door, embittering all his state. The tallest pines feel most the power of wintry blasts, the loftiest tower comes heaviest to the ground. The bolts that spare the mountain's side his cloud-capped eminence divide, and spread the ruin round. The well-informed philosopher rejoices within wholesome fear, and hopes in spite of pain. If winter bellow from the north, soon the sweet spring comes dancing forth, and nature laughs again. What if thine heaven be overcast? The dark appearance will not last. Expect a brighter sky. The god that strings the silver bow awakes sometimes the muses too, and lays his arrows by. If hindrances obstruct thy way, thy magnanimity display, and let thy strength be seen. But oh, if fortune fill thy sail with more than a propitious gale, take half thy canvas in. A reflection on the foregoing ode. And is this all? Can reason do no more than bid me shun the deep and dread the shore? Sweet moralist, afloat on life's rough sea, the Christian has an art unknown to thee. He holds no parley with unmanly fears. Where duty bids, he confidently steers, faces 1,000 dangers at her call, and trusting in his God, surmounts them all. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
In the Dark Little Flat at the End of the Court by Edith Matilda Thomas. Read for LibriVox.org by mleigh. What can the children in cities do? The children shut in from wholesome sport, the children that live all winter through in the dark little flat at the end of the court. Yet a comfort they have, and a beautiful one, though the days are chill and the days are short. At noon, for a moment, looks in the sun in the dark little flat at the end of the court. Then the dazzled baby drops his toy, down tumbles the 4-year-old's tottering fort. Sunshine! They all cry out in their joy in the dark little flat at the end of the court. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Kangaroo by David Herbert Lawrence. Read for LibriVox.org by Alan Mapstone. In the northern hemisphere, life seems to leap at the air or skim under the wind like stags on rocky ground, or pawing horses, or springy scut-tailed rabbits, or else rush horizontal to charge at the sky's horizon like bulls or bisons or wild pigs, or slip like water slippery towards its ends as foxes, stoats, and wolves, and prairie dogs. Only mice and moles, and rats and badgers, and beavers, and perhaps bears, seem belly-plumbed to the earth's mid-navel, or frogs that when they leap come flop and flop to the centre of the earth. But the yellow antipodal kangaroo, when she sits up, who can unseat her, like a liquid drop that is heavy and just touches earth? The downward drip, the down urge, so much denser than cold-blooded frogs. Delicate mother kangaroo, sitting up there rabbit-wise, but huge plum-weighted, and lifting her beautiful slender face, oh, so much more gently and finely lined than a rabbit's, or than a hare's, lifting her face to nibble at a round white peppermint drop, which she loves. Sensitive mother kangaroo. Her sensitive, long, purebred face, her full antipodal eyes so dark, so big and quiet and remote, having watched so many empty dawns in silent Australia. Her little loose hands and drooping Victorian shoulders, and then her great weight below the waist, her vast pale belly, with a thin young yellow little paw hanging out, and straggle of a long thin ear, like ribbon, like a funny trimming to the middle of her belly, thin little dangle from an immature paw, and one thin ear. Her belly, her big haunches, and in addition the great muscular python stretch of her tail. There, she shan't have any more peppermint drops. So she wistfully, sensitively sniffs the air, and then turns, goes off in slow, sad leaps on the long flat skis of her legs, steered and propelled by that steel-strong snake of a tail. Stops again, half turns, inquisitive to look back, while something stirs quickly in her belly, and a lean little face comes out, as from a window, peaked and a little dismayed, only to disappear again quickly away from the sights of the world, to snuggle down in the warmth, leaving the trail of a different paw hanging out. Still she watches with eternal cocked wistfulness. How full her eyes are, like the full, fathomless, shining eyes of an Australian black boy who has been lost so many centuries on the margins of existence. She watches with insatiable wistfulness. Untold centuries of watching for something to come, for a new signal from life in that silent lost land of the south, where nothing bites but insects and snakes and the sun, small life, where no bull roared, no cow ever lowed, no stag cried, no leopard screeched, no lion coughed, no dog barked, but all was silent, save for parrots occasionally, in the haunted blue bush, wistfully watching with wonderful liquid eyes, and all her weight, all her blood, dripping sackwise down towards the earth's centre, and the live little one taking in its paw at the door of her belly. Leap then, and come down on the line that draws to the earth's deep, heavy centre. Sydney. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Lake by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Tony Scheinman. In spring of youth, it was my lot to haunt of the wide world a spot, the which I could not love the less, so lovely was the loneliness of a wild lake with black rock bound, and the tall pines that towered around. But when the night had thrown her pall upon the spot as upon all, and the mystic wind went by, murmuring in melody, then, then I would awake to the terror of the lone lake. Yet that terror was not fright, but a tremulous delight, a feeling not the jeweled mind could teach or bribe me to define, nor love, although the love were thine. Death was in that poisonous wave, and in its gulf a fitting grave for him who thence could solace bring to his lone imagining, whose solitary soul could make an Eden of that dim lake. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Letter to Maria Gisborne by Percy Bysshe Shelley. Read for LibriVox.org by Arden. December 29, 2024. Letter to Maria Gisborne. Composed during Shelley's occupation of the Gisborne's house at Leghorn, July 1820. Published in Posthumous Poems, 1824. Sources of the text are 1. A draft in Shelley's hand, partly illegible, Foreman. Amongst the Boscombe manuscripts. 2. A transcript by Mrs. Shelley. 3. The Editio Princeps, 1824. The text in Poetical Works, 1839. First and second editions. Our text is that of Mrs. Shelley's transcript, modified by the Boscombe manuscript. Here, as elsewhere in this edition, the readings of the Editio Princeps are preserved in the footnotes. Leghorn, July 1st, 1820. The spider spreads her webs, whether she be in poet's tower, cellar, or barn, or tree. The silkworm in the dark green mulberry leaves, his winding sheet and cradle ever weaves. So I, a thing whom moralists call worm, sit spinning still round this decaying form. From the fine threads of rare and subtle thought, no net of words and garish colours wrought, to catch the idle buzzers of the day, but a soft cell, where when that fades away, memory may clothe in wings my living name, and feed it with the asphodels of fame, which in those hearts which must remember me, grow, making love and immortality. Whoever should behold me now, I wist, would think I were a mighty mechanist, bent with sublime Archimedean art, to breathe a soul into the iron heart of some machine portentous or strange gin, which by the force of figured spells might win its way over the sea and sport therein. For round the walls are hung dread engines, such as Vulcan never wrought for Jove to clutch, Ixion or the Titan, or the quick wit of that man of God, Saint Dominic, to convince atheist, Turk, or heretic, or those in philanthropic council met, who thought to pay some interest for the debt they owed to Jesus Christ for their salvation, by giving a faint foretaste of damnation to Shakespeare, Sidney, Spenser, and the rest, who made our land an island of the blest, when lamp-like Spain, who now relumes her fire, on freedom's hearth grew dim with empire, with thumbscrews, wheels, with tooth and spike and jag, which fishers found under the utmost crag of Cornwall and the storm-encompassed isles, where to the sky the rude sea rarely smiles, unless in treacherous wrath, as on the morn, when the exulting elements in scorn, satiated with destroyed destruction, lay sleeping in beauty on their mangled prey, as panthers sleep, and other strange and dread magical forms the brick floor overspread. Proteus transformed to metal did not make more figures or more strange, nor did he take such shapes of unintelligible brass, or heap himself in such a horrid mass of tin and iron not to be understood, and forms of unimaginable wood, to puzzle Tubal Cain and all his brood. Great screws and cones and wheels and grooved blocks, the elements of what will stand the shocks of wave and wind and time. Upon the table, more knacks and quips there be than I am able to catalogize in this verse of mine. A pretty bowl of wood, not full of wine, but quicksilver, that dew which the gnomes drink, when at their subterranean toil they swink, pledging the demons of the earthquake, who reply to them in lava, cry halloo, and call out to the cities o'er their head, roofs, towers, and shrines, the dying and the dead, crash through the chinks of earth, and then all quaff, another rouse, and hold their sides and laugh. This quicksilver no gnome has drunk, within the walnut bowl it lies, veined and thin, in color like the wake of light that stains the Tuscan deep, when from the moist moon rains the inmost shower of its white fire. The breeze is still, blue heaven smiles over the pale seas, and in this bowl of quicksilver, for I yield to the impulse of an infancy, outlasting manhood, I have made to float a rude idealism of a paper boat, a hollow screw with cogs. Henry will know the thing I mean, and laugh at me. If so, he fears not I should do more mischief. Next lie bills and calculations much perplexed, with steamboats, frigates, and machinery quaint, traced over them in blue and yellow paint. Then comes a range of mathematical instruments for plans nautical and statical, a heap of rosin, a queer broken glass, with ink in it, a china cup that was what it will never be again, I think, a thing from which sweet lips were wont to drink the liquor doctors rail at, and which I will quaff in spite of them, and when we die, we'll toss up who died first of drinking tea, and cry out, heads or tails, where'er we be. Near that a dusty paint box, some odd hooks, a half-burnt match, an ivory block, 3 books, where conic sections, spherics, logarithms, to great Laplace, from Saunderson and Sims, lie heaped in their harmonious disarray of figures, disentangle them who may. Baron de Tot's memoirs beside them lie, and some odd volumes of old chemistry. Near those a most inexplicable thing, with lead in the middle, I'm conjecturing how to make Henry understand, but no, I'll leave, as Spencer says, with many mo, this secret in the pregnant womb of time, too vast a matter for so weak a rhyme. And here like some weird archimage sit I, plotting dark spells and devilish enginery, the self-impelling steam wheels of the mind, which pump up oaths from clergymen and grind the gentle spirit of our meek reviews into a powdery foam of salt abuse, ruffling the ocean of their self-content. I sit and smile or sigh as is my bent, but not for them. Libeccio rushes round with an inconstant end and idle sound. I heed him more than them. The thunder smoke is gathering on the mountains like a cloak, folded athwart their shoulders broad and bare. The ripe corn under the undulating air undulates like an ocean, and the vines are trembling wide in all their trellised lines. The murmur of the awakening sea doth fill the empty pauses of the blast. The hill looks hoary through the white electric rain, and from the glens beyond, in sullen strain, the interrupted thunder howls. Above, one chasm of heaven smiles, like the eye of love, on the unquiet world. While such things are, how could one worth your friendship heed the war of worms, the shriek of the world's carrion jays, their censure, or their wonder, or their praise? You are not here. The quaint witch memory sees, in vacant chairs, your absent images, and points where once you sat, and now should be, but are not. I demand if ever we shall meet as then we met, and she replies, veiling in all her second-sighted eyes, I know the past alone, but summon home my sister Hope. She speaks of all to come. But I, an old diviner who knew well every false verse of that sweet oracle, turned to the sad enchantress once again, and sought a respite from my gentle pain, inciting every passage o'er and o'er of our communion, how, on the seashore, we watched the ocean and the sky together, under the roof of blue Italian weather. How I ran home through last year's thunderstorm, and felt the transverse lightning linger warm upon my cheek, and how we often made feasts for each other, where goodwill outweighed the frugal luxury of our country cheer, as well it might, were it less firm and clear than ours must ever be, and how we spun a shroud of talk to hide us from the sun of this familiar life, which seems to be, but is not, or is but quaint mockery of all we would believe, and sadly blame the jarring and inexplicable frame of this wrong world, and then anatomize the purposes and thoughts of men whose eyes were closed in distant years, or widely guess the issue of the earth's great busyness, when we shall be as we no longer are, like babbling gossips safe, who hear the war of winds and sigh but tremble not, or how you listen to some interrupted flow of visionary rhyme, and joy and pain struck from the inmost fountains of my brain, with little skill perhaps, or how we sought those deepest wells of passion or of thought, wrought by wise poets in the waste of years, staining their sacred waters with our tears, quenching a thirst ever to be renewed. Or how I, wisest lady, that endued the language of a land which now is free, and winged what thoughts of truth and majesty, flits round the tyrant's scepter like a cloud, and bursts the peopled prisons, and cries aloud, my name is Legion, that majestic tongue, which Calderon over the desert flung, of ages and of nations, and which found an echo in our hearts, and with the sound startled oblivion. Thou wert then to me as is a nurse when inarticulately a child would talk as its grown parents do. If living winds the rapid clouds pursue, if hawks chase doves through the ethereal way, huntsmen the innocent deer, and beasts their prey, why should not we rouse with the spirit's blast, out of the forest of the pathless past, these recollected pleasures? You are now in London, that great sea, whose ebb and flow at once is deaf and loud, and on the shore vomits its wrecks, and still howls on for more. Yet in its depth, what treasures you will see! That which was Godwin, greater none than he, though fallen, and fallen on evil times, to stand among the spirits of our age and land, before the dread tribunal of to come, the foremost, while rebuke cowers pale and dumb. You will see Coleridge, he who sits obscure, in the exceeding lustre and the pure, intense irradiation of a mind, which, with its own internal lightning blind, flags wearily through darkness and despair, a cloud-encircled meteor of the air, a hooded eagle among blinking owls. You will see Hunt, one of those happy souls, which are the salt of the earth, and without whom this world would smell like what it is, a tomb, who is what others seem. His room, no doubt, is still adorned with many a cast from shout, with graceful flowers tastefully placed about, and coronals of bay from ribbons hung, and brighter wreaths in neat disorder flung, the gifts of the most learned among some dozens of female friends, sisters-in-law, and cousins. And there is he with his eternal puns, which beat the dullest brain for smiles, like duns, thundering for money at a poet's door. Alas, it is no use to say, I'm poor, or oft in graver mood, when he will look things wiser than were ever read in book. Except in Shakespeare's wisest tenderness, you will see Hogg, and I cannot express his virtues, though I know that they are great, because he locks, then barricades the gate, within which they inhabit. Of his wit and wisdom you'll cry out when you are bit. He is a pearl within an oyster shell, one of the richest of the deep, and there is English peacock with his mountain fair, turned into a flamingo, that shy bird that gleams in the Indian air. Have you not heard, when a man marries, dies, or turns Hindu, his best friends hear no more of him? But you will see him, and will like him too, I hope, with the milk-white Snowdonian antelope, matched with this camelopard. His fine wit makes such a wound the knife is lost in it, a strain too learned for a shallow age, too wise for selfish bigots. Let his page, which charms the chosen spirits of the time, fold itself up for the serener clime of years to come, and find its recompense in that just expectation, wit and sense, virtue and human knowledge, all that might make this dull world a business of delight, are all combined in Horace Smith, and these, with some exceptions which I need not tease your patience by descanting on, are all you and I know in London. I recall my thoughts, and bid you look upon the night, as water does a sponge, so the moonlight fills the void hollow universal air. What see you? Unpavilioned heaven is fair, whether the moon into her chamber gone leaves midnight to the golden stars, or wan climbs with diminished beams the azure steep, or whether clouds sail o'er the inverse deep, piloted by the many wandering blast, and the rare stars rush through them dim and fast. All this is beautiful in every land, but what see you beside? A shabby stand of hackney coaches, a brick house or wall, fencing some lonely court, white with the scrawl of our unhappy politics, or worse, a wretched woman reeling by, whose curse, mixed with the watchman's partner of her trade, you must accept in place of serenade, or yellow-haired Polonia murmuring to Henry some unutterable thing. I see a chaos of green leaves and fruit, built round dark caverns, even to the root of the living stems that feed them, in whose bowers there sleep in their dark dew the folded flowers. Beyond, the surface of the unsickled corn trembles not in the slumbering air, and borne in circles quaint and ever-changing dance, like winged stars the fireflies flash and glance, pale in the open moonshine, but each one under the dark tree seems a little sun, a meteor tamed, a fixed star gone astray from the silver regions of the Milky Way. Afar the contadino's song is heard, rude but made sweet by distance, and a bird which cannot be the nightingale, and yet I know none else that sings so sweet as it, at this late hour, and then all is still. Now, Italy or London, which you will. Next winter you must pass with me. I'll have my house by that time turned into a grave of dead despondence and low-thoughted care, and all the dreams which our tormentors are. Oh, that hunt, hog, peacock, and smith were there, with everything belonging to them fair. We will have books, Spanish, Italian, Greek, and ask 1 week to make another week, as like his father, as I'm unlike mine, which is not his fault, as you may divine. Though we eat little flesh and drink no wine, yet let's be merry, we'll have tea and toast, custards for supper, and an endless host of syllabubs and jellies and mince pies, and other such ladylike luxuries, feasting on which we will philosophize, and we'll have fires out of the Grand Duke's wood, to thaw the 6 weeks' winter in our blood. And then we'll talk. What shall we talk about? Oh, there are themes enough for many about, of thought entangled descant, as to nerves, with cones and parallelograms and curves. I've sworn to strangle them, if once they dare to bother me, when you are with me there. And they shall never more sip laudanum, from Helicon or Himeros. Well come, and in despite of God and of the devil, we'll make our friendly philosophic revel, outlast the leafless time, till buds and flowers warn the obscure inevitable hours, sweet meeting by sad parting to renew, tomorrow to fresh woods and pastures new. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot, read for LibriVox.org by Terrance Callan. S'io credesse che mia risposta fosse a persona che mai tornasse al mondo, questa fiamma staria senza più scosse, ma perciò che giammai di questo fondo non torno vivo alcun, si odo il vero, senza tema d'infamia ti rispondo. Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table. Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights in one-night cheap hotels, and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells. Streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent to lead you to an overwhelming question. Oh, do not ask, what is it? Let us go and make our visit. In the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. The yellow fog that rubs its back upon the window panes, the yellow smoke that rubs its muzzle on the window panes, licked its tongue into the corners of the evening, lingered upon the pools that stand in drains, let fall upon its back the soot that falls from chimneys, slipped by the terrace, made a sudden leap, and seeing that it was a soft October night, curled once about the house and fell asleep. And indeed there will be time for the yellow smoke that slides along the street, rubbing its back upon the window panes. There will be time to prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. There will be time to murder and create, and time for all the works and days of hands that lift and drop a question on your plate. Time for you and time for me, and time yet for 100 indecisions, and for 100 visions and revisions before the taking of a toast and tea. In the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. And indeed there will be time to wonder, do I dare and do I dare? Time to turn back and descend the stair with a bald spot in the middle of my hair. They will say, how his hair is growing thin. my morning coat, my collar mounting firmly to the chin, my necktie rich and modest, but asserted by a simple pin. They will say, but how his arms and legs are thin. Do I dare disturb the universe? In a minute there is time for decisions and revisions, which a minute will reverse. For I have known them all already, known them all, have known the evenings, mornings, afternoons. I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. I know the voices dying with a dying fall beneath the music from a farther room. So how should I presume? And I have known the eyes already, known them all, the eyes that fix you in a formulated phrase. And when I am formulated, sprawling on a pin, when I am pinned and wriggling on the wall, then how should I begin to spit out all the butt ends of my days and ways? And how should I presume? And I have known the arms already, known them all, arms that are braceleted and white and bare, but in the lamplight downed with light brown hair. Is it perfume from a dress that makes me so digress? Arms that lie along a table or wrap about a shawl. And should I then presume? And how should I begin? Shall I say I have gone at dusk through narrow streets and watched the smoke that rises from the pipes of lonely men in shirt-sleeves leaning out of windows? I should have been a pair of ragged claws scuttling across the floors of silent seas. And the afternoon, the evening sleeps so peacefully, smoothed by long fingers, asleep, tired, or it malingers, stretched on the floor here beside you and me. Should I, after tea and cakes and ices, have the strength to force the moment to its crisis? But though I have wept and fasted, wept and prayed, though I have seen my head, grown slightly bald, brought in upon a platter, I am no prophet, and here's no great matter. I have seen the moment of my greatness flicker, and I have seen the eternal footman hold my coat and snicker, and in short, I was afraid. And would it have been worth it after all, after the cups, the marmalade, the tea, among the porcelain, among some talk of you and me, would it have been worth while to have bitten off the matter with a smile, to have squeezed the universe into a ball, to roll it toward some overwhelming question, to say, I am Lazarus, come from the dead, come back to tell you all, I shall tell you all. If one, settling a pillow by her head, should say, that is not what I meant at all, that is not it at all. And would it have been worth it after all? Would it have been worthwhile? After the sunsets and the dooryards and the sprinkled streets, after the novels, after the teacups, after the skirts that trail along the floor, and this and so much more, it is impossible to say just what I mean. But as if a magic lantern threw the nerves in patterns on a screen, would it have been worthwhile if one, settling a pillow or throwing off a shawl and turning toward the window, should say, that is not it at all. That is not what I meant at all. No, I am not Prince Hamlet, nor was meant to be. Am an attendant lord, one that will do to swell a progress, start a scene or two, advise the prince, no doubt an easy tool, deferential, glad to be of use, politic, cautious, and meticulous, full of high sentence, but a bit obtuse, at times indeed almost ridiculous, almost at times the fool. I grow old, I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. Shall I part my hair behind? Do I dare to eat a peach? I shall wear white flannel trousers and walk upon the beach. I have heard the mermaids singing, each to each. I do not think that they will sing to me. I have seen them riding seaward on the waves, combing the white hair of the waves blown back, when the wind blows the water white and black. We have lingered in the chambers of the sea, by sea-girls wreathed with seaweed red and brown, till human voices wake us, and we drown. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Man Dreams That He Is the Creator by Fredegonde Shove. Read for LibriVox.org by Bruce Kachuk. I sat in heaven like the sun above a storm when winter was. I took the snowflakes one by one and turned their fragile shapes to glass. I washed the rivers blue with rain and made the meadows green again. I took the birds and touched their springs until they sang unearthly joys. They flew about on golden wings and glittered like an angel's toys. I filled the fields with flowers' eyes, as white as stars in paradise. And then I looked on man and knew him still intent on death, still proud, whereat into a rage I flew, and turned my body to a cloud. In the dark shower of my soul, the star of earth was swallowed whole.
End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Nativity by Henry Vaughan. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Written in the year 1656. Peace, and to all the world. Sure one, and he the Prince of Peace hath none. He travels to be born, and then is born to travel more again. Poor Galilee, thou canst not be the place for his nativity. His restless mother's called away, and not delivered till she pay. A tax? 'Tis so still. We can see the church thrive in her misery, and like her head at Bethlehem rise, when she oppressed with troubles lies. Rise? Should all fall, we cannot be in more extremities than he. Great type of passions, come what will, thy grief exceeds all copies still. Thou camest from heaven to earth, that we might go from earth to heaven with thee. And though thou foundst no welcome here, thou didst provide us mansions there. A stable was thy court, and when men turned to beasts, beasts would be men. They were thy courtiers, others none, and their poor manger was thy throne. No swaddling silks thy limbs did fold, though thou couldst turn thy rays to gold. No rockers waited on thy birth, no cradles stirred, nor songs of mirth, but her chaste lap and sacred breast, which lodged thee first, did give thee rest. But stay, what light is that doth stream and drop here in a gilded beam? It is thy star runs page, and brings thy tributary eastern kings. Lord, grant some light to us, that we may with them find the way to thee. Behold what mists eclipse the day, how dark it is. Shed down one ray to guide us out of this dark night, and say once more, let there be light. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Nature by David Henry Thoreau. Read for LibriVox.org by Ike Sherr. O Nature, I do not aspire to be the highest in thy choir, to be a meteor in the sky, or comet that may range on high, only a zephyr that may blow among the reeds by the river low. Give me thy most privy place, where to run my airy race. In some withdrawn unpublic mead let me sigh upon a reed, or in the woods with leafy din whisper the still evening in. Some still work give me to do, only be it near to you. For I'd rather be thy child and pupil in the forest wild than be the king of men elsewhere. and most sovereign slave of care, to have one moment of thy dawn, then share the city's year forlorn. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
No Worst by Gerard Manley Hopkins. Recorded for LibriVox by Bartholomew Begley. Dublin, December 2024. No worst, there is none. Pitched past pitch of grief, more pangs will, schooled at 4 pangs, wilder ring. Comforter, where is your comforting? Mary, mother of us, where is your relief? My cries heave herds long, huddle in a main. A chief woe, world sorrow. On an age-old anvil wince and sing. Then lull, then leave off. Fury had shrieked, no lingering. Let me be fell, force I must be brief. Oh, the mind has mountains, cliffs of fall, frightful, sheer, no man fathomed. Hold them cheap may who ne'er hung there. Nor does long our small durance deal with that steep or deep. Here creep, wretch, under a comfort serves in a whirlwind. All life, death does end, and each day dies with sleep. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Oak by Ruth Pitter. Read for LibriVox.org by Newgatenovelist. Oh, blessed and thrice blessed evermore, to grow old in the chaste immutable silence, thinking thine own thoughts. At the golden door of thine own glade the quiet sunbeams pour, and thou look'st out across the hazy plain, from the cool greenness of thine ancient throne. Where is the biting winter? Neither pain nor vain regrets in thy deep heart remain, nor dost thou count the weary drooping years, in slow and miserly cycle one by one. 1913. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Old King Cole by Alfred H. Miles. Read for LibriVox.org by Alan Mapstone. Old King Cole was a merry old soul, a merry old soul was he. He would call for his pipe, he would call for his glass, he would call for his fiddlers 3. With loving care and reason rare, he ruled his subjects true, who used to sing, "Long live the King," and he the people too. Old King Cole was a musical soul was he. He used to boast what pleased him most was nothing but fiddle-de-dee. But his pipe and his glass he loved, alas, as much as his fiddlers 3. And by time he was done with the other and the one, he was pretty well done, was he. Old King Cole was a kingly soul was he. He governed well, the records tell, the brave, the fair, the free. He used to say by night and day, I rule by right divine, my subjects free belong to me, and all that's theirs is mine. Old King Cole was a worthy soul was he. From motives pure he tried to cure all greed and vanity. So if he found the country round a slave to gold inclined, he would take it away and bid him pray for a more contented mind. Old King Cole was a good old soul was he, and social life from civil strife he guarded royally. For when he caught the knaves who fought, or houses, land, or store, he would take it himself, whether kind or pelf, that they shouldn't fall out any more. Old King Cole's a thoughtful soul was he, and he said it may be, if they all agree, they may all disagree with me. I must organise routs and tournament bouts, and open a senate, said he, play the outs on the ins and the ins on the outs, and the party that wins me. So old King Cole, constitutional soul was he, with royal nous, a parliament house he built for his people free. And they talked all day and they talked all night, and they die but they wouldn't agree, until black was white and wrong was right, and he said, it works to a T. Old King Cole was a gay old soul was he. If he chanced to meet a maiden sweet, he'd be sure to say kitchy kitchy key. And then if her papa, her auntie or mamma, should suddenly appear upon the scene, he would put the matter straight with an office in the state, if they promised not to go and tell the Queen. Old Queen Cole was a dear old soul was she. Her hair was red as a rose, 'tis said, her eyes were as green as a pea. At beck and call for rout and ball, she won the world's huzzas, at fêtes and plays and matinees, receptions and bazaars. When old King Cole with his pipe and bowl at a smoking concert presided, his queen would be at a 5 o'clock tea at the palace where she resided. And so they governed, ruled and reigned, o'er subjects great and small, and never was heard a seditious word in castle, cot, or hall. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Quest of Haidee by Stephen Phillips. Read for LibriVox.org by Arden. September 2nd, 2024. The Quest of Haidee. A poem in 10 cantos. Canto 1. The Universal Lure Exercised by London. London, thy lure is over all the world, for thou dost call the ploughboy from the plough, or aged labourer from his clayey toil, or farmer from his stacks and mellowing fruit. The high roads to thee with wild hopes are thronged. Thou art the mighty candle of the world, in whose flame all those human moths are burned, returning and returning till they drop, shriveled at last, yet fain still of the flame. The young girl, discontented in her lanes, yearns to be whirled into thy fuller life, and then falls strangled or returns to die. The widow, pined with solitary thought, throws out at eve her lonely thought to thee, and sighs for the distraction of thy streets, the numbing roar, the hoarse relief of wheels, and mesmerizing murmur. Now to thee returns the mother o'er her boy to watch, her only son, by many a snare beset, in thy great whirlpool. Little can she do, but pray alone, and trust her vehement sigh may pierce the dreadful curtain thou hast raised, as though to hide thyself from God himself, and to transgress obscure. The good man hears thy far-off soft depopulating voice, and desert-making whisper, and he feels that thou wilt give him greater space for good, and wider opportunity, and wings that may sustain him in such arduous flight. In thee the schemer sees more scope for schemes, and dazzling crown for cold audacity. How shall the thief in country lane employ his dexterous art? To thee he comes, and thou receivest him, as all others, well. Why should the village queen, so fresh of face, wither beside the winding of the stream, and age unseen beneath the ancient elm? To thee she carries, one dark night, unknown, unguessed at, unsuspected, all she hath. A cheek of wanton dew and milky bloom, and thou dost take her in thy fell embrace, and driest all the dew upon her cheek,
and makest pale her bloom. Yet some have come to make within thy shadow splendid names, trudging unknown through many a weary field, by mighty hope upheld, or driven perhaps from quietude by fate to waiting glory, and crown which thou alone didst hold. And yet, even of these we must remember some, who wrote and wrestled, but went down at last. He who in great hope coming from the north, carrying his thoughts with him like arrows sheathed, took poison for the bread thou didst deny. And some whom thou hast called, in theatre and senate, or by fire of written page, have risen unto glory. Still to thee the seaman turns far out on landless foam, and for thy harbours yearns, and for thy docks. The soldier standing sentry in midnight, under the northern or the eastern star, remembers each familiar street and haunt, where with his friends he drank his final cup, ere for the distant conflict he embarked. And thou dost call to thee the glittering east, the sparkling potentates of sun-washed plains, thy whispers in the ear of the orient, and sad and dark and bearded, yet arrayed, with all those filched lights of Indian soil, they ride thy streets. Forever, city strange, thou shalt attract, some to a desperate doom, and to thy multitudinous loud grave, others, though fewer, to the throne of souls. Thou feedest like a spider on thy sons, enmeshed and webbed, thou feedest on them slow. Thou beckonest, and thy river is the bourne. Thou whisperest, and dark winter is the end. A million hearts that beat beyond the seas beat but for thee. What loveliness is thine! What mass of pinnacle her masonry, that lures the wanderer back, the stranger charms. Thy beauty that so fascinates the soul is not of rule her line to be appraised, or shown as model, but beneath the moon thou art as history laid bare, and strange as fable or as legend are thy towers. Bridges with beauty clothed in silent stream, that flows with all its memories upcast. Is this the hour of midnight deep, London, that thou becomest a living thing, with superhuman power, with spirit will, with strong attraction on the air of night? Is this the hour thou weavest, without word, the spell that draws the village girl and boy, all to forsake and run into thy arms? Or art thou like some goddess sitting blind, feeling with dreadful and with doubtful arms, outstretched to take, to imprison, and to stay? And now for centuries thou hast had power to woo from alien lands and other shores. One maiden in old time out of the east wandered from Palestine or perilous sea, and hostile land to seek that lover out, who by her father had been prisoner held, and whom she learned to love with secret heart. And knowing but one word, and that thy name, London, and murmuring London, on, fought out her long way to his English arms. Her then I sing, and how to thee she came. Canto 2. Long on the plains of parching Palestine, under the eastern sun or eastern stars, had Europe's chivalry with Paynim clashed, in doubtful shock and in protracted siege, to wrest from heathen hands the tomb of Christ. And many a mighty deed was seen and sung, and many a brave man bit the bloody dust, and many in strange dungeons were detained, of all who took the field of Palestine, leaving the English cliffs and barriers pale, to battle for their lord on distant shore. None fairer shone in tent or tournament, or in the raging battle's wild onset, than young a Becket from fair London town. How strange to him from London streets to fare, over the grey sea to that fiery shore. What different fields he viewed, what other skies, a larger sun with nearer fire, and stars pulsing magnificently in a vault, more thickly strewn than here we ever scan. For if the star of love in English heavens shows beautiful, more beautiful she glows in eastern midnights or in eastern eves. A sudden palace of immortal love, disclosed in sapphire and in flame revealed. He often, after the hot fight was over, would from his tent come forth into the cool, and feel the vastness of that serried host. Removed from battle and from human strife, and he drank strengthened from immortal space, and death itself seemed but a little thing, to die and pass into that glory of light. The thought gave strength unto his arm at dawn, and a cool, careless courage to his brow. Oft in the mortal joust of spurring steeds had young a Becket foremost shone and struck, and many a desperate necessary charge had led. But though in thickest fight so oft
in rally or retreat or dangerous shock. Ne'er had he suffered wound to keep him fast, within the camp or from the saddle hold him. It seemed that where he pricked without a fear, or thundered without qualm amid the press, that there alone was safety. Yet at times did others so essay ill fared they all, some trampled underfoot, some travail taken, some fortunately borne by comrades back. But at the last it chanced, before the walls of some high city that had long endured the shock of European chivalry, and stood unshaken yet, at last it chanced, for fortune will not evermore uphold, and of her favourites wearies in her time, that Gilbert, so the boy had at the font been named, was struck from off his horse and fell, blind in his own blood in the rising dust. The wound was deep, and he could lift not arm nor rise, while in the twilight now his friends retreated, all unknowing of his fate. He was made captive as he lay near death, by an Emir El Salim, bearded, grave, silent and proud, for to the Sultan scarce he bent his knee, so old his lineage red, so pure the blood he bore within his veins. He then commanded that his prisoner should to his castle suddenly be borne, and there immured until his friends should seek to free him by rich ransom from afar. Here then the English soldier lay for long, until his captor, silent, stern at first, was won to speech, and with his prisoner, who slowly had that eastern tongue rehearsed, would long hours of the olden land inquire, whence Gilbert came, and of the city famed, whose name was noised unto the Orient. So as a guest he now entreated him, and half he hoped that Gilbert would abide, making his home there in a foreign land. For the Emir had no son of his own. No son had he, only a daughter fair, as beautiful as is a summer night,
or summer eve ere yet the moon is risen.
A breezeless night of clear and cloudless bliss, although her eye might melancholy seem, holding within the secret of all night. Yet was her smile like sudden paradise, and seemed to lap one in a warmer world. And when she spoke, her voice was as the sound of some lone rivulet on mossy stones, that in the green heart of a forest flows, afar from men, unheard but of itself. She then the wounded man was at the last permitted by her father to wear watch, and tend the deep scar that so near to death had brought him. Sweetly ministering she, moved as an angel round about his couch, and first would smooth a pillow for his head, or some cool draught would bring him to allay the fever that would rise upon his lips. And ever as she came, she longer stayed, and though at first in broken jargon he, from converse with her father, slowly learned to speak to her in language of her own. Canto 3. So west the east, and east the west allured, for to his western eyes and colder blood she wore a shimmering charm which English maids lacked, moving all too slowly, without grace. Beside, she had a sweet variety of swiftly changing mood from smiles to tears, from tears to smiles, a true yet fickle way. At times she seemed the vision of the East, made flesh, of gold beginnings of the world, where first the sun sprang and the seas uplit, and all that feminine uncertainty, so that he never knew from hour to hour how he should find her, both perplexed and pleased. There was no dullness in that intercourse, which is the death of Western marriages, where all the fire died out, the married sit in hopeless silence, or with solemn words eke out the hapless evening, blessed perhaps with riches and substantial toys of life. Yet on the gleaming silver they avert their looks, and since together most alone. The music of her feet was as a dance, perpetual, and her voice as from the stars, not hallowed, yet from finer regions come.
After our stater virgins she allured his heart, his very sense, and as she moved, an eastern pity for a western wound, she seemed to move as an immortal shape, sent down from the great skies to tend his hurt. If then this eastern maiden had such power upon the prostrate soldier, yet had he no less attraction for the eastern maid. Shattered was all her life for sake of him. To her wild eyes his slower strength appealed, as shadow against burning peril, or as cool protection and as guidance sure. His measured words were full of deep advice, and of a colder wisdom than she heard from the bronzed fiery children of her clime. His fair hair and his blue and Saxon eyes were things most strange and novel to her gaze. Then too that he was wounded in fierce fight, caught at her woman's heart, that he was young, that in 100 jousts of violent arms, he by the clear admission of his foes had flinched not once, but where the peril was, had ever there been found. For courage then, as still, will fire a woman to a man. And he being simple and she subtler far, wove a still firmer bond between the two. For she would laugh out at his artless speech, though he so much had seen, she so much less. She in her inexperience was more wise, and in her woman instinct grasped at truths, which to the world-worn soldier were denied. He like a child was taught the great world's love, even by a girl imprisoned as a child, excluded from all converse by the rule of the fanatic race with whom she dwelt, yet held so close, and veiled invisible. Her learned soul in silence she maintained. Her maiden heart of passion was compat. Her virgin body knew the secret thrills of midnight or of twilight or of dawn. Then too the strangeness of that far-off land from which he came, the mystery of the West, set her a dream in foreign cities charmed. She heard the great sea beat but on his speed. She saw the long wave foam but in his voice, and the hoarse beach but echoed in his tongue. The ocean in his memories came to her. Most of that city London whence he roved, she grew to think the high and narrow streets, the merchants and the warriors and the knights. And London, London, to herself would say, as though some talisman against a hurt. These things, the growing passion of these two, the Emir regarded not. On many an eve, when the intolerable sun was down, he would to question and to conference his prisoner draw, his prisoner now a guest, made free of that huge castle so that he might wander where he would, no question asked. And to that fierce and silent eastern mind came no suspicion of his daughter's thought. There would she live till he, in his good time, found for her hand a suitor of her race. Had he suspected all that growing fire, his dagger on young Gilbert's heart had been, his dagger in his daughter's bosom plunged. No friendship and no filial love had stayed the shivering blow, but he, while these two burned, each for the other with a flame more strong, as any sun lent to that flame a torch, paced to and fro, unconscious, deaf and blind. And yet more lingered she about his room, moving this thing or that to give excuse for all the tarrying, and could hardly draw her eyes away from him as she at last departed silent, and he evermore followed with luminous glance her every step. Canto 4. But now at last, despite the glimmering charm, the gliding motion round about his couch, and the soft voice like evening in his ears, Gilbert, as now the wound to healing grew, so yearned out of the east for western fields. Not for the streets of London he repined, but he remembered, deep in country soil, a rising spire that pointed to the clouds, encircling rooks and heavy slumberous trees, and grasses of green England growing bright. A rude and pealing music broke his dreams, often, and he would start up in his bed. Only the eastern moon and eastern stars, in a hot silence bickered and were still, and buzzing flies, and all that nightly stings and as shrill, the human ear torments. These things tormented him in dead of night. For here a branded heaven his eyes beheld, a windless midnight, and like staring eyes, great stars upon him lent an aspect fierce. And more he longed for English nights, for drifting clouds and silent falling dew, for these soft crowded gardens of the west, the drowsing bird and gradual ceasing song. The trees from moment until moment stirred, the foliage now wind-taken and now still. Then these sweet cattle with low voices he recalled amid the angry hum of flies, voices of milk far off, the lowing kine, or the dim music of 100 doves. Alas, how cool, how fragrant and afar these ancient sounds and ancient sights appeared, and often would he speak to her of these. But she, though wishing every wish of his to grant, and being moved by all this speech, of him who lay sore wounded on the couch, yet could not face again a lonely life, where this strange influence had lain on her. If she had seen him never nursed this alien soldier back unto his strength, then little had she heard of English clouds, or English gloamings, or the floating bird, or smell the heaped hay of which he spoke. Forgetful of his wound a moment then, and rising on his arm to speak to her. But he had burst into her life, and now not easily could she a parting bear. For much it was to her, although perhaps briefly she saw him, briefly heard his voice, yet much it was to her to know that he was sleeping under the same dome as she. For being woman she could lie content, knowing the masonry that wound her round, him also held. There was no need of speech, or even of look, though both of these were sweet. The moonbeam that upon her fell, on him, fell with an equal silver. This she knew, and knowing this her eastern patience kept. But if he went from her to cross the sea, and the great water put between the two, and nevermore unto the east returned, but there where he was born, in peace remained, perhaps another maiden of his race, to take unto his bosom and his heart, how should she the bright noontide of the east, or darted light from many a blistering star, endure alone? So she made bold to speak, and somewhat in such words as follow here, did she in her sweet jargon with long sighs, the heavy secret of her heart disclose. "O sir, I fain would help you to the shore, from which to battle for your master's tomb. You crossed the seas, and since in many a fight, wert crowned with glory, till at last unhorsed, and deeply wounded to our house was brought, where not unkindly, as I think by me, nor by my father hast thou tended been. For more as to a guest or neighbor dear, have we discoursed with thee, and hour on hour, unwearying beside the lamp have talked. But I grudge thee to thy cloudy skies, and to the breaking sound of English seas. I speak quite simply out, I love thee then, and love with the quick passion of our race, since first beneath our portal thou hast come. But what perhaps was fancy then has grown into a something not to be despised, and not discarded lightly, for each hour, each moment has been guiding me to thee. My life was shattered, but to be rebuilt, on grander issues, and on mightier thoughts, than ever in this lonely East had been. Thou art a new thing come from far away, bringing a different air, another light, with thee, and having seen the one no more, I can forget, or part thee from my mind. Then if I aid thee to escape, how then stands the lone soul that watches thee depart? Why should I send thee from me to my hurt? Canto 5. But Gilbert, tossing through the sultry night, exclaimed, "Sweet Haidee, by these burning stars, I swear I am as loath to leave thy side, as thou sayest, art loath to see me gone. Me thou wouldst please in aught, I know it well. How often hast with thy eastern swiftness done what I with slower western mind had thought, sweetly preventing thee dull speech that rose, even then upon my lips, or some request, unuttered hast thou granted instantly. Surely this is the half of ministering, not only to stand ready with the draught, to time the pulse and cool the beaded brow, to smooth the pillow or the coverlet. All these are well and hasten health again, but subtler is the silent ministry, to mind the understanding of the eyes, to hear the unspoken whisper of the sick. Ah, fortunate he, who stricken on his couch, watches a lady of high breed and blood, steal to and fro, but guesses beautiful, responding to the muteness of the mind. Such hast thou been to me, by day, by night, and understanding too how all unused to the great fire so closely wrapping us, or nights without a breath, this frame has been, but was most natural a delight to thee. Thou yet couldst see was to a stranger hard, and difficult unmurmuring to bear. Such wisdom cometh from the heart, not head, and more in women than in men is found. All this I know, that thou wouldst gratify each smallest whim, if in thy power it came. Much more a deeper longing that each day grows stronger to return unto my land. Yet even with thy hands outstretched to aid, falters thy heart, and lingers half thy soul. And thou dost grudge me too the English breeds. But Haidee, though I love thee, and each day more truly, though I would thy heart were spared the arrow of our parting and the sting, yet in the night dear faces visit me, in hopeless sorrow and with watching pale, faces not young nor beautiful as thine, but thrilling out of childhood and brave youth. I can but think upon my father old, who goeth to and fro the house undone, and mourns for me in silence day and night. I can but think upon my mother grey,
who sent me forth to battle with such pride, and yet such sorrow, for her heart misgave if she should ever see her son again. Ah, I can feel these two sit hand in hand, in heavy evening ere the stars have come, hopelessly gazing through a falling dew. No word perhaps is said, and yet I see, from time to time, one hand the other press, or a slow tear come to the eyes and fall, for they abide beside a lonely sea. Now that old age from London has withdrawn, the hurrying merchant weary of his bales, and hospitable rites of many friends, not unpleased to be ridded at the last. So from the lone sea window will they watch the unresponding ocean and cold foam, and hear the friendless rhythm of the brain. For of my comrades who have safe returned, what do they know? Whether I live or die, or wounded or imprisoned, or to death, put secretly in dungeon of the East. All they can tell, and most they can report, is that unhorsed I on the ground was left, none knowing, while the host retreated safe, from ramparts unassailable and strong, and how they will have hope that still I live, and suddenly may come again to them, and how the hope will go out as a light, and they believe me dead in a strange land. For Haidee, know I am their only son, no other have they, and no daughter young, who might console, support, at least distract, the fixed mind and old remembering hearts. I was their sunrise, I was all their dawn, themselves forgotten, to my fate they looked, and ever glorious as they looked, it seemed. But now a blank has settled down on them, uncertainty far worse than cruel truth. For dreadful as the shock and noose of death, it spends itself, and slowly tolerable, the sun returns and the moon goes her path, and in a daze and heavy dream we move, save now and then for the quiet hidden dart of recollection and of hopeless love. So might they come with time, at last with time, not to forget, ah, never to forget, but gradually in my far-off doom, to acquiesce and closer grow to me, being old and near the greeting that awaits all souls that loved beyond the earthly grave. But now, ah, sweet, forgive me if my thought seems false to thee, and to return to them. It is not so, but I am troubled sore, and suffer many things because of them, unless they pass away ere I return. Then, sweet, forgive me, speak, and ease my fears. Canto 6. Then she to him, lingering eyes of dew, far be it from me that I come between thee and thy aged father and mother old, who pine for thee beside the unanswering wave and unresponding billow. Then thou art their only son, no other to console, no daughter to put arms about their neck, and whisper sweet untruths with good intent.
For often a girl may to the heart convey comfort in ways not understood of men.
Then, as thou sayest, dread uncertainty, far worse than actual shock of sudden truth. I would not intervene to break the past, and shatter all those holy memories. But then, oh then, if thou shouldst leave me quiet, forgive me, Gilbert, that I can but think a little of the life forlorn to be. Ere I had met thee, simple were my days, and if tranquillity be happiness, then was I happy, for the simple toil that calls an Eastern maiden to her task was all sufficient. To and fro I went, and my grave father pleased, and that I pleased was all my life. Little to me he spoke, and never of the matters of the heart, since in the East a maid secluded lives, walled in, and exiled and deaf and blind and dumb, so that I had no audience but the stars, nor any close companion but the moon. Then, when west broke in upon the east, then languid thou wast carried to this house, and suffering, with strange and alien eyes, thou didst regard me mistily and mute. Then by thy coming all my life did cease, for a new splendor burst upon my soul. It was not thou, but all that thou didst mean, O breaker of a silence as of tombs, O hurler of a bolt from serene skies. Thou didst pluck the veil from off my face, aye, and the deeper veil from off my soul. Then I began to breathe, to move and live, and the sweet stirring of a vaster life caught at my heart and like to coming spring, with a wild ache and odor streamed on me. I had been so enfolded till that hour, that the first falling dew of thee was pain. Pain and yet joy, a light yet not a light that made my darkness yet more dark. And when I came to minister to thee, The solace that I gave thee made more deep what I had dreamed, or to thy couch I came, to hover o'er thee, to suppress each sound, to see that silence sweetly was observed, and that no voice broke in too harsh on thee. All these duties added to my flame, and made that active which till now had slept. The placing of a pillow at thy head, the bringing of a cool draught to thy lips, to ease thee in the hot and fiery night, these tasks but fed like fuel silent fire. And after, when thou hadst the strength to speak, in broken whisper, then in stammering tongue, which soon our eastern music and our words learned to pronounce, when of a different land, of distant sun and glooms of heavy dew, of peaceful farms and wandering cattle thou didst give me the strange picture, I have wept. I know not why, but still so sweet it seemed. So thou becamest to me more than thyself, an image of the half-world yet unseen, and in deep night I felt thy claims arise over the English graves and English fields. Such hast thou been to me. Ah, not, believe, merely a human being but lying crowned, with mystery of gardens and of grass, and shivering trees and birds invisible, and with the strange spray of a solemn sea. For never the great sea have I beheld, but in thy words, never the thousand ships, nor heard the bursting billow at midnight. Oh, thou hast sung to me from thy sick bed, of wonder and of things beyond my ken. A messenger from other worlds art thou, and I cannot lose thee, let thee go. No, not for father's or for mother's sake. For going thou dost take away my dreams, my very being and breath, all which I late have learned of the great world in which we dwell. O Gilbert, wheresoever thou goest I go, and if I aid or can contrive escape, dear, leave me not behind. I should but pine, and wither slowly to an eastern grave. Then should my father say to me, my child, what ails thee? Or some man of medicine call, fool, with his herbs and drugs to make me well. Then dying to my father I perchance would speak, and father, weakly I would say, since he hath gone, the life in me is gone. With his departing I am lone and lost. Ah, if thou wouldst my breath revisit me, call him again over the foreign sea, else I shall go without him to my grave. Canto 7. Meanwhile in England, by the grey sea ridge, did Gilbert's father and his mother old mourn over him from the red hour of dawn, which slowly lit the sea and brought the day, till in mid-heaven like to an empress's throne, the sun above the vassal waters reigned, and so till he declined transparent bright, or on a cloudy wonder glorious, the vast orb in the western ocean sunk. Sees not these two in silence to lament? What use for words? O'er the lone waste they gazed, the waste that would not yield them up their sun, or bring on its horizon any sail. And the days passed, the months passed, and the years, but never the red dawn on lighted sea, or the sun standing noontide emperor, or setting in the wonder of his clouds, gave them a hope or faintest gleam of hope. At length the father said, what think you, wife? Here to abide will bring not Gilbert back, for he may touch upon a different shore, and landed make for London in his zeal. He knows not that we have forsook the town, wearied at last of bales and merchandise. If he should sudden upon London burst, thinking to take us by some sweet surprise, and full of memories of adventure hard, of battle shocks, perchance imprisonment, and many evils happily escaped, think the long night to while away from rest, what should he think to find a closed house, a barred-up mansion, and a solitude, where mighty welcome he might most expect? But she replied, he will not come again, for I am sure within me he is dead. Some word, some wandering whisper from the sea, had reached us all this time, full sure am I, or some belated warrior of our host, released perhaps from foreign chains, would find a way to me to tell me of his fate, whether alive or dead. Then said the man, surely a wonder would it be if we had any word or wandering whisper heard, or any warrior from afar had come to apprise us of his state. That were indeed too great things to expect. No, his first news will be himself. But all these things apart, whether our son be dead or still alive, doth not the lonely surge increase our pain? Doth not the nightly billow with slow break still more and more our loss accentuate? Alas, how the bereaved mind can read
its proper desolation into waves, and mingle with that mighty music all that lies about the heart and will not leave us, thought-free a moment. Then I say again, the pain were less, where all that murmur comes of various life and various faces seen. For nothing, no, not London, vast houses, and loud and hoarse the narrow-streeted town, can interpose between us and our dead, or once distract us from our memory. Still even slight and passing things may make the intolerable weight a little lift. And in the shifting show and changed scene, relief is drawn, relief however short. Is not this wise then, for a double cause, now to forsake, if only for a time, the melancholy coast and hanging clouds, the grey reminding rocks and floating gulls? So these two journey back to London town, a journey then tardy and dangerous, full of delays, and ever with a fear of footpad or of mounted robber met. At last the little city, large to them, still in the madding cloaks of masonry, yet with a smokeless charm, upon them broke. There then once more they rested aged limbs, and still desired the coming of their son. But he, whether because more sultry grew the air and full of buzzings and of stings, lay in long fever, ever at his side, the eastern damsel with cool hands of peace, and in the whirl of his delirium, ever and ever London would he cry, and London, so that word of all our tongue, she treasured fast and murmured to herself. And thought she, if his flight I do contrive, and loose him to the far and pine foreshore, and to those reverend hearts that mourn for him, to London will he go, whate'er the way, however far the plains and seas between. And if he will not suffer me to go, but as his page to follow and attend, for all his whims, who knows if I know not? If he forbid me then to follow him, unseen, unheard I will to London haste, and saying his sweet name from door to door, at last I will discover him, and then let him do with me even as he please. In London still she murmured to herself. Canto 8. But as the prisoner's strength returned to him, and sadly back she nursed him in her thought, for it would come to pass that he at length, restored and full of rest, would leave her side. So with his gathering strength the thought grew strong, to fare away over the distant sea, and clasp those first inspirers of his life, yet once again on his long-parted breast. And she saw the ungovernable hope spring in his eyes each day and settle there. Then would she commune thus with her lone heart. And if I find some means for his escape, if I devise his solitary flight, for without me and my sad aid at hand, he never shall escape this prisoning stone. If I, who love him so deliberately, even with stratagem and peril too, conspire to lose him, what the gain to me? Why should I not then hold him as a bird, my favourite bird to look on at all hours, to keep and nurture ever in my sight? Shall I, who hang upon the thought of him, unbar the cage for my own misery, and see with swimming eyes him flee away? For never again shall he return to me, once having gained the vast and spacious plains, even should he meet with violence on his road, or yet again a prisoner should be held, or put to midnight death in forest deep, or in wild tempest thrown upon the track, and all that lovely body with the sea rise and subside, then sink for evermore. Whate'er might chance to him in wandering back to that isle which lures him night and day, never shall I behold him any more, unless, and now a light came to her cheek, and sudden splendor on her upraised face, unless I set him free, then follow him, not as his servant or attending page, but all unknown whate'er the perils be. For I should have more comfort in my heart, be better able to oppose distress, or danger, or whate'er calamity, so that I felt each step that I did take was bringing me the nearer to his side. Oh, this were better, 10 times better this, than here to languish full of memories, breathing what has been rather than what is. My mother long is dead, she shall not mourn whate'er betide me, only I repent my father stern, yet ever soft to me, left to uncertainty of my wild fate. He to his father flies, but mine I leave. And when did ever a woman or a girl, whose heart love filled, weigh old against the young, or father against lover, or ever set the maiden past against the future wild, that beckons on and ever on her soul? So cannot I, that once I'll set him free, but never a word of my adventure hint, and half the pain of his departure miss in secret joyous knowledge of the heart. So chanced it then that preparation made, the guard, cajoled or bribed or drugged to sleep, upon a lucky night of solid gloom, he, softly swinging down a rope, touched earth, and was away into the ebon night. But ere he went, again and yet again, he thanked her, and would kiss her burning lips, and swear him chained unto her memory forever, and if things about his hearth prospered, he would return and ask her hand of the stern father from whose grasp he fled. And all the while her heart was smiling fast, to think that she would follow him amain, he knowing nothing. Last, she asked of him to say again the far-off city's name, which he so oft had murmured in his dreams. London, he murmured. London, murmured she, as though she clasped to her a talisman, or put a key within her bosom safe, that should unlock the gates of all the west. He being fled, Haidee, her father's wrath, must dare, but never in his mind it slept, that she, his daughter, that escape devised. The guards were fettered for a while, but they had payment full, and at their fetters laughed. The storm of passion from her father passed, his rage subsiding as a sea, when winds that lifted the wild billow to the clouds sink, and the sun smiles out upon a floor of gold and scarcely heaving waters bright. And now her own more perilous escape she must devise, and without quailing make. First thought she, should she have companions by, and take one with her but to exchange a word, and lighten the great solitude of nights. But better at the last it seemed that she should all the adventure brave out by herself, and if she perished, perish then alone. Canto 9. At last a night fell dim, benignant, dark midnight consenting all her stars concealed, and ruled the huge heaven with her serried clouds. She then the long-expected night embraced, and being clothed, accoutred as a youth, with free limbs slept down from the massy tower, where since a child she slept. She lighted safe, and being well provided in her dress, with many a jewel secreted, here was hid a pearl, and here a diamond, here again a sea-blue sapphire, for the peril not dismayed her. Forth she sped into the dark, nor did she reck of robber or a thief, or being slain in some dark forest glade, for sake of what she carried fearlessly. The one thought in her brain and in her heart was that she followed him throughout the world, and in deep ecstasy she wandered on, under the massy cloud, who guided her, for no stars in the firmament uprose, by which she might have told her trackless way, and no moon came to aid her on her road. Still through the gloom she pressed, and to herself, London, she murmured, London, yet again, as though she cried unto that city far, to take her to its arms, and to his arms, who in delirium murmured oft the name. Wearied at last, uncertain of her path, she lay down in a forest, all whose leaves murmured about her in a solemn song, or congregated hymn of foliage. Then as the dawn not yet appearing made a stillness in the world, and one by one, bird upon bird awoke, and dreamily, each to the other dimly felt for voice. She sank asleep, and as she slept, she dreamed. Yet not of him she loved, so much she dreamed, but that a child unto them two was born, and was a mighty figure in that land, whereto he journeyed, and she followed him. Dim was the history to her unrolled, and now one scene was bright, and then was lost. But he, their son, it seemed, was as a king, and friend of some great king who ruled the land. He and the English monarch to and fro paced hand in hand, and to each other spoke, now gravely, and now lightly, so it seemed. They were as comrades, sportive as our boys, and nothing, one would deem, would part these two, or jar the easy friendship of the twain. Sudden she woke, and cried aloud, and sprang upright. The ghostly forest had been changed to some cathedral, and an altar stood before her, and as on that altar she gazed, on a sudden armed knights enrushed, but drawn swords and their son who mildly stood, still in the holy place, they seized and slew. She looked about her on the leaves for blood, his blood, for blood of his had sure been shed. Had she not seen it dripping on the steps? Long while she stood and pondered on the dream, then to the unaccustomed air and space, the falling dew, the murmuring of trees, the vision she ascribed,
and yet how like that murdered face that reeled before her still, to him whom now she followed, though in fear, yet followed, and would follow to the end. Here idle all her travel to recount, how captured by a lawless brigandage, and how, by her strange tale and eyes of truth, she won from violence their captain rude, who sent with her an escort to the coast. How then by giving certain splendid stones she was conveyed over sea, though once well nigh wrecked and cast up upon a rocky shore. Yet even in eastern desert, in forest huge, and various murmuring oceans still it seemed that London wooed her safely to its arms. At last in the first dawn before her rose those cliffs so dear that pine across the wave, and yearn forever in a broken thought, with faces that remember or aspire. There disembarked, yet she no word could say, but to the questioning inhabitants, London, and London, London yet again. So, slowly and by difficult degrees, through many a village, many a town made she, and all with wonder gathered round her steps. Some styled her as an eastern sorceress, and she from many a village and small town was driven with the cries of ignorance, yet never failed her heart, and since she still held sewn about her many a glimmering gem, easily could she bargain for her way, until by midnight on the high road shone the city of her wishes and her prayer, the home of him she came so far to find. Here day on day she wandered through the streets, murmuring the city's name through city ways, yet never the abode of him she loved could light on, until fortune drew her steps thither unto her goal of wandering. Canto 10. Long wandered she about the London streets, and seeming strange was ever followed close by curious crowds. To these she strove in vain, how to be understood. 2 words alone she knew and could repeat, London the one, the other Gilbert. London she had found, but still the jewel of all London sought. Then said she to herself, how know I then that he far in the east hath perished not? How know I then that he has reached the shore? Perchance by armed men was he waylaid and murdered in the dark of forests far. Perchance by wild beasts was asunder torn, or furious winds have driven him upon rocks, or cliffs perhaps of desert islands, there to languish solitary by the sea, to starve beside a barren ocean, or seized by the barbarous habitants and slain. Who knows but I, the weaker, may have scaped, that he, the stronger, hath encountered. So fruitless my voyage all, a fruitless love, an expedition vain across the world. Here now in London where his life began, the city which he murmured in his dreams, I wander, but I find not what I seek. Ah, Gilbert, if in the great city thou still dwellest, if thy father's hearth at last thou hast attained, then pity me, beloved, who wander and roam and yearn but for thy face. Oh, art thou not aware of me, although thou seest me not, nor ever word is changed between us two? Still art thou not aware that I am breathing air not far from thee? Oh, thou must know. The greetings to thy sire, the expected kiss upon thy mother's lips, these, if thou livest long ago, were given. Now hast thou leisure to remember me, and all those hot nights of the eastern moon, when to and fro I ministered to thee, and with a soft strange song thy pain assuaged. Think, but think of all those miles of earth, and see that I have traversed for thy sake, and turn thy thoughts a little way to me. Gilbert, I faint, I die apart from thee. So would she rhapsodize to her lone soul, and commune with herself for half the night, her jewels sleep and nourishment procured, room in a tavern tranquil, where she dwelt, all unmolested though in London's heart. At last it so fell out that on an eve of glorious sunset burning after rain, she saw and stood and knew the man she sought. But he, remembering her in other guise, and in a different land, pierced not the garb which had so well disguised her on her quest. Then came she to him, and thus murmured she, Sir, am I all forgotten? Is it past the happy time upon that eastern shore? Ah, but you know me not. Am I a boy, think you, though so many so would guess at me? No, but a very woman and your own. Lo, the great seas, the sands, the blackening winds, all have I dared. The perils of the road, the midnight ambush, and the leap of beast, these and much more I lightly overpassed. See what a great love can accomplish,
See how it is capable of stern resolve, and not of sweetness only, for it means to dare to fight, forever to endure. Thus have I proved that love is not a thing of brief and burning kisses and an end. Steadfast it is, as wild and strong and sure. The love in me disdained the rising seas, made light of mountains and of heat and cold, and safe have I come even to thy arms. Dost thou not know me, Gilbert? Gaze and gaze, until at last some far familiar way will strike upon thy recollection sweet, and thou wilt spring and take me in thy arms. But think not that I come to harass thee, to be a daily burden in thy life. There needs but from thy eyes a lonely look, a little sad dissuasion of thy brows, and I am gone from thee for evermore. A little, a very little, is enough to send me back over the mighty seas, forgiving, yet not once forgetting thee. Oh, not a word is needed for that end, a slightest motion of thee shall suffice. But he, now growing used to the idea, for at the first he heard as in a dream, in a slow rapture took her to his breast, and kissed her here, now there, and many times. Hath ever, said he, such a feat of love been known in this dull world as this of thine? Was ever so much risked or so much dared? Now to my mother will I make you known, and through the long night shall your tale be told. And if as far away thou didst agree to turn to Christ, we then will married be, and all the bells of London shall be rung. And so it came to pass, and that ere long, these two were wedded while the spires acclaimed. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
September Night by Ruth Pitter. Read for LibriVox.org by Newgatenovelist. If that you ride by road or lane in the September dark, when there is neither mist nor rain, and nothing can you mark but a tall darkness for a tree, and for the road a gleam of white, and scent of leaves breathed heavily, it is a fairy night. Brief is the kingdom, 9 hours long, that the good people hold, but it is full of whispered song in the crisp breezes cold, and every dell a darkling round of shadow when the moon is none, holdeth a little chattering sound which cometh and is gone. 1914. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Sheridan's Ride by Thomas Buchanan Reed. Read for LibriVox.org by Phil Schempf. Up from the south at break of day, bringing to Winchester fresh dismay, the affrighted air with a shudder bore, like a herald in haste, to the chieftain's door, the terrible grumble and rumble and roar, telling the battle was on once more, and Sheridan 20 miles away. And wider still those billows of war thundered along the horizon's bar, and louder yet into Winchester rolled the roar of that Red Sea uncontrolled, making the blood of the listener cold, as he thought of the stake in that fiery fray, and Sheridan 20 miles away. But there is a road from Winchester town, a good broad highway leading down, and there, through the flush of the morning light, a steed as black as the steeds of night was seen to pass, as with eagle flight, as if he knew the terrible need, he stretched away with his utmost speed. Hills rose and fell, but his heart was gay, with Sheridan 15 miles away. Still sprung from those swift hoofs, thundering south, the dust, like smoke from the cannon's mouth, or the trail of a comet sweeping faster and faster, foreboding to traders the doom of disaster. The heart of the steed and the heart of the master were beating like prisoners assaulting their walls, impatient to be where the battlefield calls. Every nerve of the charger was strained to full play, with Sheridan only 10 miles away. Under his spurning feet the road like an arrowy alpine river flowed, and the landscape sped away behind like an ocean flying before the wind, and the steed, like a bark fed with furnace ire, swept on, with his wild eyes full of fire. But lo, he is nearing his heart's desire. He is snuffing the smoke of the roaring fray, with Sheridan only 5 miles away. The first that the general saw were the groups of stragglers, and then the retreating troops. What was done? What to do? A glance told him both. Then striking his spurs with a terrible oath, he dashed down the line, mid a storm of huzzas, and the wave of retreat checked its course there, because the sight of the master compelled it to pause. With foam and with dust the black charger was gray, but the flash of his eye and the red nostrils play, he seemed to the whole great army to say, I have brought you Sheridan all the way from Winchester, down to save the day. Hurrah! Hurrah for Sheridan! Hurrah! Hurrah for horse and man! And when their statues are placed on high, under the dome of the Union sky, the American soldier's temple of fame, there with glorious general's name, be it said, in letters both bold and bright, here is the steed that saved the day, by carrying Sheridan into the fight from Winchester 20 miles away. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Snow by Robert Frost, read for LibriVox.org by Teresa Cazzaro. The three stood listening to a fresh access of wind that caught against the house a moment, galloped snow, and then blew few again. The Coles, dressed but dishevelled from some hours of sleep, Mr. belittled in the great skin coat he wore. Mr. was first to speak. He pointed backward over his shoulder with his pipe stem, saying, "You can see it glancing off the roof, making a great scroll upward toward the sky, long enough for recording all our names on. I think I'll just call up my wife and tell her I'm here so far, and starting on again. I'll call her softly so that if she's wise and gone to sleep, she needn't wake to answer." 3 times he barely stirred the bell, then listened. "Why, Let, still up? Let, I'm at Cole's. I'm late. I called you up to say good night from here before I went to say good morning there. I thought I would. I know. But, Let, I know. I could, but what's the sense? The rest won't be so bad. Give me an hour for it. Ho, ho, 3 hours to here. But that was all uphill. The rest is down. Why, no, no, not a wallow. They kept their heads and took their time to it, like darlings, both of 'em. They're in the barn. My dear, I'm coming just the same. I didn't call you to ask you to invite me home." He lingered for some word she wouldn't say, said it at last himself, "Good night," and then, getting no answer, closed the telephone. The 3 stood in the lamplight round the table, with lowered eyes, a moment till he said, "I'll just see how the horses are." "Yes, do." Both the Coles said together. Mrs. Cole added, "You can judge better after seeing. I want you here with me, Fred. Leave him here. Brother Meserve, you know to find your way out through the shed." "I guess I know my way. I guess I know where I can find my name carved in the shed to tell me who I am. If it didn't tell me where I am, I used
to play. You tend your horses and come back. Fred Cole, you're going to let him? Well, aren't you? How can you help yourself? I called him brother. Why did I call him that? It's right enough. That's all you ever heard him called around here. He seems to have lost off his Christian name. Christian enough, I should call that myself. He took no notice, did he? Well, at least I didn't use it out of love of him. The dear knows I detest the thought of him, with his 10 children under 10 years old. I hate his wretched little racker sack. All's ever I heard of it, which isn't much. But that's not saying, look, Fred Cole, it's 12. Isn't it now? He's been here half an hour. He says he left the village store at 9. 3 hours to do 4 miles. A mile an hour, or not much better. Why? It doesn't seem as if a man could move that slow. And move. Try to think what he did with all that time, and 3 miles more to go. Don't let him go. Stick to him, Helen. Make him answer you. That sort of man talks straight on all his life, from the last thing he said himself, stone deaf, to anything anyone else may say. I should have thought, though, you could make him hear you. What is he doing out a night like this? Why can't he stay at home? He had to preach. It's no night to be out. He may be small, he may be good, but one thing's sure, he's tough, and strong of stale tobacco. He'll pull through. You only say so, not another house or shelter to put into from this place to theirs. I'm going to call his wife again. Wait. And he may. Let's see what he will do. Let's see if he will think of her again. But then I doubt he's thinking of himself. He doesn't look on it as anything. He shan't go there. It is a night, my dear. One thing. He dicing drag God into it. He don't consider it a case for God. You think so? Do you? You don't know the kind. He's getting up a miracle this minute. Privately, to himself, right now, he's thinking he'll make a case of it if he succeeds, but keep still if he fails. Keep still all over. He'll be dead and buried. Such a trouble. Not but I've every reason not to care. What happened to him if only takes some of the sanctimonious conceit out of one of those precise scallywags. Nonsense to that. What want to see him safe? You like the runt, don't you, a little? Well, I don't like what he's doing, which is what you like, and like him for. Oh yes, you do. You like your fun as well as anyone. Only you women have to put these airs on to impress men. You've got us so ashamed of being men we can't look at a good fight between 2 boys and not feel bound to stop it. Let the man freeze an ear or 2, I say. He's here. I leave him all to you. Go in and save his life. All right, come in, Meserve. Sit down. How did you find the horses? Fine. And ready for some more? My wife here says it won't do. You've got to give it up. Won't you to please me? Please, if I say please. Mr. Mervis, I'll leave it to your wife. What did your wife say on the telephone? Mervis seemed to heed nothing but the lamp or something not far from it on the table. By straightening out and lifting a forefinger, he pointed with his hand from where it lay, like a white crumpled spider on his knee. That leaf there in your open book, it moved just then. I thought it stood erect like that, there on the table, ever since I came, trying to turn itself backward or forward. I've had my eye on it to make out which. If forward, then it's with a friend's impatience, you see, I know, to get you on to things. It wants to see how you will take. If backward, it's from regret for something you have passed, and fail to see the good of. Never mind. Things must expect to come in front of us a many a times. I don't say just how many. That varies with the things before you see them. One of the lies would make it out that nothing ever presents itself before us twice. Where would we be at last if that were so? Over our very life depends on everything's recurring till we answer from within. The thousandth time may prove the charm. That leaf, it can't turn either way. It needs the wind's help, but the wind didn't move it. If it moved itself. The wind's at night in here. It couldn't stir so sensitively poised a thing as that. It couldn't reach the lamp to get a puff of black smoke from the flame, or blow a rumple in the coil's coat. You make a little foursquare block of air, quiet and light and warm in spite of all the illimitable dark and cold and storm, and by so doing give these three, lamp, dog, and book-leaf, that keep near you, their reports, through, for all anyone can tell, repose. Maybe the thing you haven't yet you give it. So false it is that what we haven't we can't give. So false that what we always say is true. I'll have to turn the leaf if no one else will. It won't lie down, then let it stand. Who cares? I shouldn't want to hurry you, Meserve, but if you're going, say you'll stay, you know. But let me raise this curtain on a scene and show you how it's piling up against you. You see the snow, white through the white of frost. Ask Helen how far up the sash it's climbed since last we read the gauge. It looks as if some pallid thing had squashed its features flat and its eyes shut with over-eagerness to see what people found so interesting. In one another he had gone to sleep of its own stupid lack of understanding, or broken its white neck of mushroom stuff, shut off and died against the window pane. Brother Mervis, take care, you'll scare yourself more than you will us with such nightmare talk. It's you it matters to, because it's you who have to go out into it alone. Let him talk, Helen, and perhaps he'll stay. Before you drop the curtain, I'm reminded you recollect the boy who came out here to breathe the air one winter, had a room down at the Averys. Well, one sunny morning after a downy storm, he passed our place and found me banking up the house with snow, and I was burrowing in deep for warmth, piling it well above the window sills. The snow against the window caught his eye. Hey, that's a pretty thought. Those were his words. So you can think it's 6 feet deep outside while you sit warm and read up balanced rations. You can't get too much winter in the winter. Those were his words, and he went home and all, but banked the daylight out of Avery's windows. Now you and I would go to no such length, and at the same time you can't deny it makes it not a mite worse, sitting here, we three, playing our fancy, to have the snow line run so high across the pane outside. There is a sort of tunnel in the frost, more like a tunnel than a hole. Way down at the far end of it you see a stir and quiver like the frayed edge of the drift blown in the wind. I like that. I like that. Well, now I leave you people. Come, Meserve. We thought you were deciding not to go. The ways you found to say the praise of comfort and being where you are. You want to stay? I'll own it's cold for such a fall of snow. This house is frozen brittle, all except this room you sit in. If you think the wind sounds further off, it's not because it's dying. You're further under the snow, that's all, and feel it less. Hear the soft bombs of dust. It bursts against us at the chimney mouth and at the eaves. I like it from inside more than I shall out in it. But the horses are rested, and it's time to say good night and let you get to bed again. Good night. Sorry I had to break in on your sleep. Lucky for you, you did. Lucky for you, you had us for halfway station to stop at. If you were the kind of man paid heed to women, you'd take my advice, and for your family's sake, stay where you are. But what good is my saying it over and over? You've done more than you had a right to think you could do now. You know the risk you take in going on. Our snowstorms, as a rule, aren't looked on as man-killers, and although I'd rather be the beast that sleeps the sleep under it all, his door sealed up and lost, than the man fighting to keep above it. Yet think of the small birds at roost and not in nest. Shall I be counted less than they are? Their bulk and water would be frozen rock in no time out tonight, and yet to-morrow they will come budding brose from tree to tree, flirting their wings and saying chickadee, as if not knowing what you meant by the word storm. But why, when no one wants you to go on? Your wife, she doesn't want you to. We don't. And you yourself don't want to. Who else is there? Save us from being concerned by a woman. Well, she told Fred afterward that in the pause, right there, she thought the dreaded word was coming. God. But no, he only said, well, there's the storm that says I must go on, that wants me as a war might, if it came, ask any man. He threw her that as something to last her till he got outside the door. He had Cole with him to the barn to see him off. When Cole returned, he found his wife still standing beside the table near the open book, not reading it. Well, what kind of man do you call that? She said. He had the gift of words. or is it tongues I ought to say? Was ever such a man for seeing likeness, or disregarding peopled civil questions? What? We've found out in 1 hour more about him than we had seeing him pass by in the road 1,000 times, if that's the way he preaches. You didn't think you'd keep him after all. Oh, I'm not blaming you. He didn't leave you much say in the matter, and I'm just as glad we're not in for a night of him no sleep. If he had stayed, the least thing set him going. It's quiet as an empty church without him. But how much better off are we as it is? We'll have to sit here till we know he's safe. Yes, I suppose you'll want to, but I shouldn't. He knows what he can do, or he wouldn't try. Get into bed, I say, and get some rest. He won't come back, and if he telephones, it won't be for an hour or two. Well then, we can't be any help by sitting here and living his fight through with him, I suppose. Cole had been telephoning in the dark. Mrs. Cole's voice came from an inner room. Did she call you, or you call her? She me. You'd better dress. You won't go back to bed. We must have been asleep. It's 3 and after. Had she been ringing long? I'll get my wrapper. I want to speak to her. All she said was he hadn't come, and he'd really started. She knew he had, poor thing, 2 hours ago. He had the shovel. He'll have made a fight. Why did I ever let him leave this house? Don't begin that. You did the best you could to keep him, though perhaps you didn't quite conceal a wish to see him show the spunk to disobey you. Much his wife'll thank you. Fred, after all I said, you shan't make out that it was any way but what it was. Did she let on by any word she said? She didn't thank me. When I told her gone, well then, she said, and well then, like a threat. And then her voice came scraping low. Oh, why did you let him go? Asked why we let him? You let me there. I'll ask her why she let him. She didn't care to speak when he was here. Their numbers 21. The thing won't work. Someone's receiver's down. The handle stumbles. The stumble thing. The way it jars your arm. It's theirs. She's dropped it from her hand and gone. Try speaking. Say, hello, hello, hello. What did you hear? I hear an empty room. You know it sounds that way, and yes, I think I hear a clock, and windows rattling. No step through. If she's there, she's sitting down. Shout. She may hear you. Shouting is no good. Keep speaking then. Hello? 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 You don't suppose she wouldn't go outdoors? I'm half afraid that's just what she might do. And leave the children? Wait and call again. You can't hear whether she has left the door wide open and the wind's blown out the lamp and the fire's died and the room's dark and cold. One of two things, either she's gone to bed or gone outdoors, in which case both are lost. Do you know what she's like? Have you ever met her? It's strange she doesn't want to speak to us. Fred, see if you can hear what I hear. Come. A clock, maybe. Don't you hear something else? Not talking. No. Why, yes, I hear. What is it? What do you say it is? A baby's crying. Frantic it sounds, though muffled and far off. Its mother wouldn't let it cry like that. Not if she's there. What do you make of it? There's only one thing possible to make. That is assuming that she has gone out. Of course, she hasn't, though. They both sat down, helpless. There's nothing we can do till morning. Fred, I shan't let you think of going out. Hold on. The double bell began to chirp. They started up. Fred took the telephone. Hello, Reserve? You're there, then? And your wife? Good. Why I asked? She didn't seem to answer. He says she went to let him in the barn. We're glad. Oh, say no more about it, man. Drop in and see us when you're passing. Well, she has him then, though what she wants him for I don't see. Possibly not for herself. Maybe she only wants him for the children. The whole to-do seems to have been for nothing. What spoiled our night was to him just his fun. What did he come in for? To talk and visit? Thought he'd just call to tell us it was snowing. If he thinks he is going to make our house a halfway coffee house, twixt town and nowhere, I thought you'd feel you'd been too much concerned. You think you haven't been concerned yourself? If you mean he was inconsiderate to rout us out to think for him at midnight, then take our advice no more than nothing. Why, I agree with you, but let's forgive him. We've had a share in one night of his life. What'll you bet he ever calls again? End of Snow. This recording is in the public domain.
To be Eaten with Mustard from Bishopric Garland Collection. Read for LibriVox.org by Roger Smith. To be eaten with mustard. The boar is dead, so here is his head. What man could have done more than his head off to strike, beleaguer-like, and bring it as I do before? He living spoiled, where good men toiled, which made Cansera sorry. But now dead and drawn is very good brawn, and we have brought it for ye. Then set down the swineherd, the foe to the vineyard. Let Bacchus crown his fall. Let this boar's head and mustard stand for pig, goose, and custard, and so ye are welcome all. End of recording. This recording is in the public domain.
Two Crows by Francis Hard. From Weird Tales, January 1925. Read for LibriVox.org by Dale Grothmann. Two crows flapped over dismally, so wearily, so drearily, to the blackened limb of a blasted tree. The shells flew screaming overhead, and the field was covered thick with dead. The earth reeked with its dead. One crow lamented to his mate, so wearily, so drearily, how long must we now wait for the taste of food that is so good, before the shrapnel shattered the wood and loaded the ground with dead? The odor sweet of dying men, lamented he so drearily. How strangely pleasant was it when I sensed it first with ravaged breath. But I am sated and sick to death, and would fain lie yon with the dead. A shell came moaning through the air, so drearily, so eerily, and burst where the crows were plaining there. It shivered the wreck of the blasted tree, and bits of crow fell bloodily among the tangled dead. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
What the Thrush Said by John Keats. Recorded for LibriVox by Bartholomew Begley. Dublin, December 21st, 2024. O thou, whose face hath felt the winter's wind, whose eye has seen the snow clouds hung in mist, and the black elm tops 'mong the freezing stars, to thee the spring will be a harvest time. O thou, whose only book has been the light of supreme darkness, which thou feddest on night after night when Phoebus was away, to thee the spring shall be a triple morn. O fret not after knowledge, I have none, and yet my song comes native with the warmth. O fret not after knowledge, I have none, and yet the evening listens. He who saddens at thought of idleness cannot be idle, and he's awake who thinks himself asleep. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
With Strawberries by William Ernest Henley. Read for LibriVox.org by Ike Sherr. With strawberries we filled a tray, and then we drove away. Away along the links beside the sea, where wave and wind were light and free, and August felt as fresh as May, and where the springy turf was gay with thyme and balm, and many a spray of wild roses. You tempted me with strawberries. A shadowy sail, silent and grey, stole like a ghost across the bay. But none could hear me ask my fee, and none could know what came to be. Can sweethearts all their thirst allay with strawberries? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The World by Fredegonde Shove. Read for LibriVox.org by Bruce Kachuk. I wish this world and its green hills were mine, but it is not. The wandering shepherd's star is not more distant, gazing from afar on the unreaped pastures of the sea, than I am from the world from me. At night the stars on Milky Way that shine seem things one might possess, but this round green is for the cows that rest, these and the sheep. To them the slopes and pastures offer sleep. My sleep I draw from the far fields of blue, whence cold winds come and go among the few bright stars we see, and many more unseen. Birds sing on earth all day among the flowers, taking no thought of any other thing but their own hearts, for out of them they sing. Their songs are kindred to the blossom heads, faint as the petals which the blackthorn sheds, and like the earth, not alien songs as ours. To them this greenness and this island peace are life and death and happiness in one, nor are they separate from the white sun, or those warm winds which nightly wash the deep, or starlight in the valleys, or new sleep, and from these things they ask for no release. But we can never call this world our own, because we long for it, and yet we know that should the great winds call us, we should go. Should they come calling out across the cold, we should rise up and leave the sheltered fold, and follow the great road to the unknown. We should pass by the barns and haystacks brown, should leave the wild pool and the nightingale. Across the ocean we should set a sail, and, coming to the world's pale brim, should fly out to the very middle of the sky, on past the moon, nor should we once look down.
End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.